Well, good morning, everybody. I'll get everyone to take their seats and get ready to start. Cool, well, thank you and good morning. As you can tell, I'm here to replace Councillor Charles as Deputy, so it's my pleasure to be chairing this meeting. Morena Potawa. We do have quite an interesting agenda ahead of us with our CCOs and also some videos to be displayed during the operational report. So I'd like to declare this meeting open, welcome everyone here, our staff from the CCOs, our public and also everyone live streaming. Just a reminder that with live streaming to turn your mics on and speak clearly. So we'll open the meeting with any apologies. We do have Councillor Charles. Anyone else? Yes? Yes, worship the Mayor for lateness. Okay, may I call for a mover? Dave Donaldson and Meripika Raukawa-Tate. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Cool. Any declarations of interest this morning?
Yes, morena tata, morena Madam Chair. Ka pakara we tono ki kuna. Just on page 33.422, the lakefront development. Just want to declare an interest there for someone pukeroa. So.
Okay, thank you. Any urgent items not on the agenda? Yes, Councillor Gould.
Madam Chair, there is an item, as councillors we haven't been briefed on the Zone 2 meeting in Rotorua on the 21st and 22nd of September. At 10:45 to 11:45, Mr Starvis Michael is making a presentation to councillors from the Zone 2 region, which covers the Waikato-Papini region. He's going to be talking on options for future waste services for the Rotorua Lakes Council. So I thought we as councillors should have been briefed before that particular meeting so we are aware of what he's going to be discussing.
Thank you. I'll get our Chief Executive to respond.
Councillor, you are, can I just reassure you, you are aware of everything that Mr Michael is actually going to be covering, because what he will be talking to is the process and procedures that have been followed over the last 2 years with regards to our waste minimisation program.
Thank you. And moving on, we'll go to confirmation of minutes. For the minutes of Operations and Monitoring Committee meeting held 3rd of August, can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Kent. Mr Waru. All those in favour? Thank you. So first item on the agenda today, we'll move to staff reports. Recommendation 1, Council Controlled Organisation Performance for the 4th quarter ended 30th of June 2017. Can I please have a mover and a second to receive? Thank you, Raukawa-Tate. Thank you, Mr Gould, seconded. Meripika and Mark. For mover. So. And seconder, Mr Waru. Yeah, you got that? Cool. Well, we'll just change the order slightly, and if we could please have Destination Rotorua Michelle Templer to come up first to present, followed by the Rotorua Airport, Mark Gibb, and Infracore Limited. Good morning, Michelle. We'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Morena, thank you very much. Just go through our Q4, but also includes our end of financial year update. This is basically the first year of operations for Rotorua Economic Development Limited. And I think it's fair to say since starting in November, it's been fantastic to see the organisation get to a point at the end of the financial year where I think we're well placed going forward. So on our key measures, we had an increase in revenue, but also a number of expenses. So we ended up with a small net loss. Our visitor services key performance measure is on Net Promoter Score, so that's a level of satisfaction of people coming into the eyesight centres, which was very pleasing because we've increased the hours of operations quite substantively, both at the Redwoods and at Fenton Street. Business events market share of delegate days, 10.2%. And that's third after Auckland and Wellington. So that's a real achievement for Rotorua. The International Commercial Accommodation Monitor visitor nights and activity and attractions visits, which I'll go into more detail afterwards, were both up. Domestically, we had a particularly good result for the end of the year. And again, I'll go into some more detail. On our investment attraction, business development, service delivery, all of those were completed, which gave us 94% of KPIs achieved. Just again, small net loss. Probably one of the most important indicators for us as a non-subjective measure is visitor expenditure. So it's particularly pleasing that that was up by 6.5% to 799 million. 3.77 million visitor nights, also an increase of 4.9%. Increase in commercial guest nights. And while this is a list of numbers, we are also benchmarking these against national averages. And again, given the increase in tourism and commercial activity, it is pleasing to note that these numbers have held against other regions' increasing numbers as well. Probably the most, for me, one of the great outcomes was our Delve research, which highlighted that a quarter of all domestic visitors and a third of all Australian visitors came to Rotorua in the last 12 months. And that's a fantastic result. I think there has to be a huge acknowledgement of the industry, but also just the general destination offering. And this is the sort of information that highlights that, you know, the private sector investment and local council investment has made a real difference. Our tourism attractions and activities up 7.9%. But important to note, in Q4 in particular, the Lions visit had a positive impact, again with the game here with the Māori All Blacks, but also poor weather heavily impacted a number of our operators, particularly our smaller activity operators. And again, that's important because they're owner-operators, so a particularly wet Q4 has been quite challenging for them, as well as it being the winter season. Eyesight's revenue was up 20.2%, and that was on static commission rates. And we've also been talking to the industry, and one of the things, feedback they've given us, is they're happy for our eyesight to receive more revenue. It doesn't go against the grain because it means that they're converting visitors who come in for information and actually booking them in, so they know they're going from their eyesight to their attraction, rather than changing their mind and just not participating in activities. A rapidly growing area is our groups and school visits. We actually had 47 school visits in August alone. And again, they're quite big numbers of groups. You may have seen uniformed youth walking around in town. And again, it's, for me, a fantastic thing that a lot of them are coming for social studies, geography, history, and the programs which, again, a lot of the providers and private sector support us on, really provide quality, in-depth insights into our destination. And the feedback is that the students are really wowed by what's on offer, but also the depth of history and culture. Our total customer count is 1.19 million, so that's a huge number of foot traffic coming in and availing themselves of those services. Uh, 80,248 multi-day conference delegates, so that 10.2% of market share. As I mentioned, third after Auckland and Wellington. And again, if you think about the level of competition out there and the increasing competition coming online, that's a fantastic result. That result is, again, the hotels and motels are actively seeking conferences. So really demonstrates that Rotorua is holding its own as a key provider of meetings, business events and conferences. For the team itself, they converted $29 million worth of multi-day business events. And we've had an increasing number of larger multi-day events as well that we've won. We've just recently secured the Volcanology Conference. It's not till 2021, but they're very in line with, really pushing forward what is a key strength is our technical and scientific, but also our deeper understanding of our natural environment. Our trade team has had a number of road shows, one to India, and then with Tourism New Zealand, with other regional tourism organisations in Australia. They've actually just come back from a roadshow in Australia with 18 local operators, which was very successful. One of the challenges, though, is prioritising where our spend goes and making sure that we're getting a good ROI on those, return on investment for that. Again, strategic partnerships, and we've had a established relationship with Flight Centre. Flight Centre also has a wholesaler. So we've got an active program where we seek to engage the Flight Centre agents, get them to understand just what is our offering here. And we find that bringing their top performing agents to Rotorua is a memorable experience for them. But again, we can't do that without the fantastic support of the local industry. And obviously we're continuing to invest in our social media platforms. Those channels continue to be incredibly important in our reach and also cost-effective reach into market. For business development and investment attraction, I think it would be fair to say that this has been very much putting the platforms in place for our ongoing focus. But we've continued to support the Accelerate program. That program's delivered with Fire Station and again working closely with local Rotorua businesses to help them succeed, particularly those on a high growth pathway. We've just finalised a number of market analysis reports, and they will form the foundation for investment attraction. One I'm particularly excited about is around geothermal water and mud. And we're co-funding that with Investment New Zealand, looking at opportunities around medical wellness and commercial product applications. And again, that will become a foundation piece, and we've already spoken with other central government agencies for support and ongoing funding for that. Project Palace is another central government initiative that we're working closely with. On hotel attraction, but also major hotel redevelopment and reinvestment. And there's some the report is currently embargoed, but we have been working with them, and it shows an average daily rate increase of 11%. And again, if you look back sort of over a 5 to 10 year track, it is incredibly positive to see hotel and motel rates increasing and occupancy up at 88%. So that's a fantastic indicator. Talent attraction and perception campaigns I'll go into in a minute. And we've locked in some destination management key projects. Destination management is very much around focusing on the experience of our visitors from the time they arrive in the destination and their journey and experience through the destination. The focus of the programs is to address some things that were identified in the Terry Stevens report. One is the level of service, but also our storytelling. And so the Manaaki Hospitality program will seek to do that. The wayfinding program is looking at, again, how people move through the destination. We're very aware that a lot of our attractions and activities actually take people outside of the city. So how do we ensure that they're aware of what's around them? But also, how do we enrich that experience and ensure that they're experiencing the stories and insights around, what is special around Rotorua. It's a key part of that project is working closely and collaboratively with a number of groups, particularly as we move forward into bilingual Rotorua, which we're very excited about. Matariki is looking at a pre-feasibility and pre-commercial study on what can we do to activate around that. We really feel that Matariki should be a cornerstone part of Rotorua's landscape, particularly in July, which is one of those quieter periods for us. And then events leveraging and legacy and the Department of Conservation MOU. We're particularly keen that people look at providing feedback on the great walks with the opportunity to create a great walk around Tarawera. We've undertaken research around high-value visitors year-round and scoped that project, and that will be we'll be looking forward to reporting back on that. And that's really about understanding how we move from volume to value, ensuring that we are maximising getting those people here and making sure they have a quality experience. But also high-value visitors tend to tread more lightly on our land and our infrastructure. Our monitoring indicators show GDP growth 3.1 versus nationally, positive business confidence, but again, employment, confidence in finding labour has decreased, so I think it's at about minus 30.8 on skilled labour, which demonstrates that while we are getting more skilled people coming to the destination, businesses are still telling us that it's difficult to find specific skills that they need. And also, again, not a lot of confidence in finding unskilled labour as well. That's despite our unemployment rate actually being up and net international migration sort of negative growth as well. So after 3 years of the domestic campaign with the industry, we feel that our research shows us that perception is still one of the key things that impact investment. It's one of the key things that influences talent attraction. It's one of the key things that influences business relocation. And it's actually one of the key things that impacts our local business confidence. So we've just got our benchmarking, which is again a key performance measure on perceptions of Rotorua. The research shows that our natural outdoors and natural environment and activities are still key themes, particularly for the Auckland market. The high correlation between visiting Rotorua and relaxing and active family time, and a real positive movement in line with Rotorua's desire to be a getaway destination for New Zealanders. The 4 categories, we're particularly pleased that we've had shifts away from the rejectors. So the 2015 figures have significantly dropped, and the number of considerers has increased substantively. But we are seeing a bit of a slowing down in that rapid increase. So with industry, the review of the Famously campaign, it feels like the right time to refresh that. And we'll be taking that forward into also talent attraction and investment attraction. So here's a sneak peek of the new Famously Rotorua refresh branding. The intent is very much to focus on what we think is some of our fantastic attributes, with some epic shots of just how spectacular the destination is, as well as ensuring we've got people in the pictures and their personal experiences. Another change is, rather than just having Famously Rotorua, to actually start putting in messaging around memorably, distinctively, breathtakingly, stunningly, and that enables us to use the campaign a bit more widely. Here's another image. And that's all from me, so happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. Do we have any questions? Councillor Okawate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report this morning. The Terry Stevenson's report, he mentioned quite a number of things that, maybe we should be looking at in the future, obviously based on his experience and worldview, etc. Is there anything from that report, Michelle, that you thought perhaps you would have liked to have undertaken, but either the time's not right or the environment's not receptive? Is there anything glaringly that we haven't addressed there? Because there was quite a number of recommendations.
Yes, there are. I think there's about 27 key recommendations. I think we've focused very much around service and quality of experience. Terry is absolutely passionate that in destination or placemaking is a responsibility of, it has to be a whole community approach. One is what he calls sweating assets. So he feels that there's a number of iconic assets that potentially either need reinvestment or redevelopment to ensure that we're attracting and broadening engagement in the destination experience. He was quite focused on arts and culture. He felt Rotorua had real potential there. Just recently we've done a few small things, supporting Adrian Whitewood with other private sector individuals at Fashion Week. And it was really interesting how bigger, what a significant perception change those sorts of things have, along with Ka Wiripa. People's just understanding that Rotorua is many things. I think, and things we haven't really focused on. One was provenance around food offerings, and that's one we're still looking at.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Kent, followed by Bentley, Gould and Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report, Michelle. I'm referring to page 23, your statement of intent KPIs, and there are three that concern me rather somewhat. Firstly, our residential consents volumes, which is one of your KPIs, has basically been stagnant for the last 12 months when nationally there's been movement of increase of 4.7%. Secondly, our net international migration figures, which is down by a whopping 11%. And thirdly, our unemployment rate, again against the trends, has gone up to 7%. And I have to ask the question, it's all very well counting Facebook likes, but are we actually targeting what we should be targeting in the way of marketing Rotorua?
On residential consents, these are monitoring indicators, so we recognise that these, again, are indicators of whether we are, outcome based, so are we making a difference? And I think it is a valid point that our consents rate demonstrates that we need to work harder to deliver confidence to developers that, it's worth moving consents through. I've been working with council and also engaged with the property council to understand what their concerns are, particularly around business development consents. Are we marketing correctly? I think it does highlight that we need to consider how we, continue to build that confidence. On unemployment, again, as I mentioned in the presentation, there are some interesting counter indicators that businesses are saying they're struggling to find unskilled and skilled workers when the unemployment rate has effectively gone up. I've been to see the Department of Immigration and Labour to try and understand why we've had that variability, particularly in the last quarter. They have said that it is fairly normal to get some sort of seasonal variation, but again, we have made a commitment to continue to focus on talent attraction and ensure that we're seeking to work with business to understand how we can have some more active engagement in getting people from, if we've got a pool of people who are interested in being in employment, how we match them with businesses. And so we are building partnerships with TPK on how do we address and what sort of programs would be relevant.
Yes, I think Your Worship, welcome to the meeting, would like to add something to that?
It's a question, actually. It's a bit of a supplementary leading on from Councillor Kent. Has Destination Rotorua developed a partnership relationship with Toi Ohomai so that we're linked up both for Rotorua and the wider region to attract the right people?
Yeah, I think we're probably reforming our relationship with Toi, and we're, again, we're seeing some really positive things in bringing education into the community. So we've got some initiatives underway with Toi around that. And I think just having a better dialogue on what we're collectively trying to achieve. So I think it's early stages at the moment, but I'll look forward to reporting back some concrete examples of what we're doing shortly.
Thank you for those answers, Michelle. And tourism is our biggest employer, so it's pleasing to know that you're looking at straight from the training stage as well. So we go to Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your report, Michelle. Of your 2.21 guest nights that you are quoting in your report, does that include, and how do you measure it? Does that include the Airbnbs and booker batches and so forth? And if you do so, do you give that information to council as well?
The figure actually comes from 5 different sources. So we commission research, so it comes from the Private Home Monitor, and so that potentially does pick up Airbnb and Book a Batch, hotel through Tourism Industry Association statistics, hotel motel, holiday parks and backpackers, so it's a comprehensive number. Because it's a third party that actually does the measuring for us, because it is a measure, so we don't measure it ourselves, the individual sample information is not provided to us. So no, I'm afraid we don't pass that on to council in relation to Airbnb and Book a Batch.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
Madam Chair, thank you, Michelle, for your report. Is there part or parts of Destination Rotorua which you need to have a better look at? Because I noticed that you've made a loss of $1,420. It's not a huge loss, I admit that, but your eyesight revenue is up 20.2%, which indicates that your revenue is up quite sufficiently where your loss is minor, which means there's probably a part of Destination Rotorua which probably needs to be looked at or come back to council about that we've got a problem with. Because I know conferences are important when you're seeing staff overseas generating future business for Rotorua.
I think in the first year of operation, we've certainly had a good look at our finances. And I think one of the challenges in a first year of operation, there's been a number of costs that, having been some of them spun out as business units from council, has really put the spotlight on where expenditure's falling. And I think that's right, that a CCO should. It's one of the great things about spinning them out. There's a spotlight on every cent that's going out of the door. One of the things with that increase in revenue, there were things like merchant fees that we hadn't fully costed out, that probably previously were taken up by parts of council. So now that we've got visibility on those, we're looking at how we reduce costs. Overall, though, I think the major variances were actually in wages, and then a number of costs around just operating costs that we hadn't fully perhaps budgeted for. That's the major variations.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, followed by Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I've got 2 questions, Michelle. Thanks for the presentation. The first one is around the market analysis work that you're having done, and in particular the one regarding the wellness benefits of geothermal water and mud, which might be a useful insight to share with the Geothermal Liaison Working Group that Councillor Bentley and I are on. But I'm aware that Destination Rotorua is a reference point for a number of potential investors into Rotorua. Is that information provided free, or do you are you seeking to monetise that? Is my first question.
Sorry, thank you. The research scope will be working closely with GNS initially, but also experts in medical wellness. And the intent was very much to get some empirical evidence of what the benefits are. At this stage, with co-funding from Investment New Zealand, the intent is that this is platform information that would be widely available, not only to investors, but also to local businesses to assist them in targeting investment and supporting their own business cases. So we wouldn't seek to monetise that. It is part of the investment attraction strategy that we have baseline information that enables people to make a faster and more informed decision on what sort of opportunities are there.
Thank you for that. And my second question was the drop in confidence in finding skilled and unskilled labour. From the discussions you've had, is it just about skills, or is it also the inability to get housing, all of those things? And is it just a role for the tertiary provider? I mean, Her Worship and I were at a meeting with Timberlands yesterday who have real trouble sourcing skilled labour to drive machinery because the whole industry is mechanised now. So, and they recognise that industry has a role to play in upskilling the workforce as well. So I'd just be interested in your views on that.
There's actually a Bay of Plenty research study underway, connecting in Waikato University as well as Toi Ohomai. So this is an issue for the wider bay, including Eastern Bay of Plenty. And that's looking at what are some of the critical issues around training. I guess so we'll look to work closely with Toi on that. I think Toi's already demonstrating that they're trying to get even closer to businesses to understand, how they meet those training needs. But the one that comes through is getting people to relocate here. So the belief is that there are people out there with the skills. So either getting them to relocate here, so a two-pronged strategy around ensuring that we're, training not just youth, but having retraining programs that enable people to upskill and then re-engage with the workforce, as well as ensuring youth see opportunities here. But secondarily, for the businesses who've got a gap, that there are options. And the feedback we are getting is housing is a challenge. And I guess that does connect with that, the point rightly made that our consents, we've had a look at consents against other regions as well, and I think it's got to be a holistic solution. If people won't come if they don't feel like they've got somewhere to stay. The other recent bit of work we've done, though, which I thought was really pleasing, is it used to be a major detractor for people concerns around the quality of education at a primary and secondary and tertiary level, and that's shifted substantively. So there's been some fantastic work done by schools here around, demonstrating that they're, providing quality education to students.
And supplementary through you, Madam Chair, just on the education, anecdotally we're hearing that the bilingual initiative is attracting quite a number, both in terms of the education offering, but also they see other benefits for business.
Yes, I went to Wellington last week to the Economic Development New Zealand conference just for one day, mainly because Terry Stevens was presenting, so I wanted to catch up on that. But again, was in Tauranga talking about Bay of Plenty, Bay of Connections around research for labour and education. And in both places they were saying the level of interest in Rotorua was bilingualism being a cornerstone of our destination. They saw that as a huge advantage. In meetings with MB around Maori Economic Development Strategy, they've got a number of initiatives, but again they're really refocusing on Rotorua, so that was again pleasing. So I agree. I think I haven't got any data to substantiate that, but anecdotally it is coming through strongly. As well as visitors, really positively received from the tourism sector.
And it's really positive news. So we've got Councillor Maxwell now, and then followed by Her Worship, and we'll wrap up, and Mr. Waru, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, Michelle. You responded to a question from Councillor Rotorua and my ears up when you touched briefly on Adrian Whitewood and Carl Wedeper getting Rotorua tremendous exposure and publicity, the TV programs with the geysers in the background and all that. The question I have is, what are the opportunities from that? And as you touched on art and culture, that Fashion Vogue magazine, I mean, that's huge, you know. So are there any other opportunities you feel that are going to come up, and let's take advantage of people who are good for Rotorua, like Carl and Adrian?
I think there certainly is, right across a number of areas. With Adrian, it was really around a successful business, and so for us it was really around supporting the profile of a growing successful business. And we took Carl and some of his designs. He very generously worked with us on the Australian Roadshow, and we actually had a fashion show in Australia. Ahead of all of Vogue promotion, so we're picking that up and feeding that out as well across our channels. I think there's ongoing opportunity. It's fantastic. We're also, for our talent attraction, we don't have substantive funds for this year, but what we will be doing is doing some filming of key personalities around people who live here and have business here and are growing internationally from here. So we'll be seeking to highlight some of that amazing talent that was born here, but also amazing talent that's come here from other regions or other countries, just to showcase, you know, the opportunities here.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Having been at that conference, Michelle, are there any market signals that have come out of our signing of a housing accord?
I think again, probably the main one, so there are just that confidence for developers to, you know, so they're to take things through to development, and there's nothing like being in Wellington, not far away from an election, to realise that there is some nervousness around not only domestic but international politics. So for me, the number one thing is confidence for investors, whether they're property investors or developers or our local community, that there isn't going to be some major correction in the housing market. So the housing accord was seen as underpinning some of that, and that's incredibly important.
And lastly, Mr. Waru.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia morena anō rā tātou. Thank you, Michelle, for your report. Awesome. Just got a couple of comments and a question at the end. So just in terms of it's been mentioned to reduce costs and things like that. I think we have to be a little bit careful around that too, because it's not always about cost. It's about the value you're bringing to the table as well. And as far as I can see, there's some real value been happening in like a commercial visitor nights, etc., etc. So, you know, I'll just say, although you did run at a loss, it's not a major one, but you know, keep that in mind too, the value you're bringing. More about the culture. You've already quoted Terry Stevens in saying, you know, well, actually when he was here last time, the culture is inseparable from the rohe. So, you know, I look at that kind of picture there, no, ātāhua. But, you know, it could be that with he waka Māori pekaimuri, or something like that, just trying to do those little subtle hints that that our culture strong here, even though that's the main focus here. But I tell you, that does make a difference when you have those things. So one of the words might be culturally, biculturally, or whatever, you know, something like that. Just some ideas. And to get to my question, has there been any thought given to sort of holding maybe regular job symposiums, I suppose, with tourism operators?
Yeah, we participated in the Careers Expo, and it really highlighted for us that we haven't done much recently in what I'd call a sort of B2C to consumer channel. So we haven't been to shows, domestic focused shows that are public facing. Whether that's the right sort of place, but we're considering that. One of the main things is with the redevelopment of the eyesight for earthquake strengthening, we've taken the opportunity to put a lot more digital capacity in there, and our hope is that as people go into the eyesight, not only will they be able to see what wonderful opportunities there are to experience in the destination, that will also have jobs coming up on those screens, so people can see jobs that are available. I think it's a good suggestion. I mean, it's such a critical issue that it's certainly something we'll consider.
Kia ora, tēnā koe. And just one more thing, don't underestimate the power o te reo when you're doing your things here. Koe rano, kia ora.
G'day.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and I'd like to congratulate yourself and your staff for your first year as a CCO of Destination Rotorua, and acknowledge all the hard work you guys are doing behind the scenes, not only to grow our economy but also promote Rotorua to the world. So thank you very much.
Kia ora, thank you.
I'd now like to call Mark Gibb up for his presentation on the Rotorua Airport. I understand you have a PowerPoint presentation to present to. For councillors that don't have it, we will make sure that copies are given to you after the meeting.
Kia ora, everyone. What I'd like to do today is to cover off two key areas. Firstly, to give a summary of the Q4 results for the airport, but also give you a snapshot in terms of the overall annualised performance. Within that, I'd like to dig a wee bit deeper around the statement of intent and a number of the positive initiatives and outcomes that management and the board have underway through the course, certainly, of FY17 and out beyond that. So, in terms of the financial performance, quickly to tack through a number of KPIs for you. First off, against a budget of 106,000, the company's achieved a net surplus of 614k versus budget. So, as a key lead indicator for the airport, very satisfying result. Passenger movements were just under 235,000. That's about just over a 5% increase relative to the previous 12-month period at 222,000. The RDC loan is currently sitting at $15 million versus a starting balance of $18.6 million. So again, we're ahead of the run rate in terms of debt repayment. And again, that is a strong focus for management and the board in relation to extinguishing that debt in accordance with the SOI. The fourth point is the airport has a working capital facility of $3.5 million. Again, as we sit at the moment, that's sitting at zero. In actual fact, at $722 DR as at this morning. Total assets for the business were at 46.048 million. That was the transfer value of the assets. We've just had an audit, New Zealand audit completed, and there's no material movement in the value of the underlying airport asset. And if we simply take off the RDC debt, we've got a net assets position of 30.61 million. So as I've noted there, the year-end position is subject to audit, which we're looking to close out today.
and a fuller and more in-depth summary of the overall performance of the airport will be delivered in our AGM, which historically occurs in November, to which all councillors are invited. Moving into the, I suppose, into the statement of intent, and I would just like to call out and thank councillors and the council for their support over the last 12 months. A number of the initiatives that we deal with with a company call on the support of council and the broader community. So again, thank you very much for that support. So just to run through the key headlines under the SOI. Firstly is from a health and safety perspective, we've got a new health and safety system that has been implemented. The airport environment these days is very complex in terms of the management of safety, both on ground and in the airspace. It's a very collaborative approach with Airways, Civil Aviation and a number of other authorities. So the health and safety system from our perspective covers a huge range of areas, and I'm pleased to say that that has been successfully implemented across the broader airport operation. We've had very strong performance around controllable safety incidents and employee injuries. Both have been delivered year-end at zero. We've had full operational compliance across the airport operations. The company itself was audited stringently by CAA and a number of other authorities throughout the course of the year, and again there's been no issues that have come up through that process. We've looked to optimise the shift roster with airport foreign operations. Through the course of the last few months I've received several queries in terms of the size of the airport team. Again, for the record on that, the airport as such, we run a 7-day business. We open the gates at 5:30 in the morning. We close at 10 at night. There's a number of nights in which we have people there till 12 or 1, subject to aircraft coming in. The business is run with 13 staff, so we have 6 foreign operations on the go through the course of what is a very long shift roster. We have 1 head of foreign operations, we have 3 customer service staff and cleaners, which double head in the terminal. They receive baggage, etc. And again, they run 7 days from 6 in the morning to 5 at night. Myself and a finance manager. So the company itself has 13 staff, but if I boil down an FTE number across the broader breadth of our operations, we're potentially sitting under 10 FTEs. So we are lean. We've had very strong collaboration with government agencies in order for us to be successful in terms of the way we operate and our future vision for the airport. There's strong collaboration with Airways, with the Civil Aviation Authority, with the Ministry of Primary Industries, etc. And the last is around design of a new foreign operations building. A review of the foreign operations building, which was built in the 60s, indicated there were some seismic issues with that building. So as part of the broader airport redevelopment plan, a new building has been designed. Consent documentation is set to lodge over the ensuing month. Just another item, again I've received a couple of queries on what we call OTP, or on-time performance, so it's not included within the report, but again, just to give people a general sense around that issue, OTP, or on-time performance, is measured in a couple of areas. Firstly, simply the number of flights that are scheduled on any calendar month versus a number that actually land and get away. And the second is around the accuracy of, and generally airlines talk about a 15-minute window in terms of air accuracy of aircraft landing and taking off against stated schedule times. As all of us will be aware, we've had a very wet year this year. The airport rain gauge records through January through to the end of May. We're at 200% of our annual rainfall. When we measure that with a warmer than has been normal spring, summer, winter, that's created significant challenges for the airlines and aircraft that are operating within Rotorua. To dispel a misconception, it's not the airport that pull flights, it's not the airlines that pull flights. In a number of situations it may be a call by the tower or Airways, and those calls effectively to bounce a flight to another port are often made around safety. Okay. So there is no advantage for anyone in having a flight missing Rotorua Airport, and I can assure you that all agencies do their utmost to make it happen. If I looked at that period of that 5-month period, our OTP, or the number of cancelled flights, was just over 6%, i.e. 6 in 100 flights, or with the 230 odd flights that we operate through that period, there's about 20 odd that were cancelled. And ostensively they are through weather conditions. Okay, so that general performance, if I looked across the broader airport community in New Zealand, it's about 1% worse than the average at about 5%. So we are not that much worse off. We do not have a significant problem around the inability for airlines to operate within Rotorua. What we have had is a very challenging period of time. On to the next point, helping council achieve its growth aspirations. Even in the midst of what has been a very challenging period from a weather perspective, passenger growth is still up 5% on FY16. So again, if I track back over the last 3 years, very positively we are seeing incremental growth year on year on year. We're looking to form a very collaborative approach with key sector groups to drive demand and match airline seat capacity. The next point is around the development of specific route and sector growth strategies. So just to talk through that a wee bit more, the issue of the discontinuation of the Wellington sector was raised in October last year. So to give some context around where that sits at the moment, we are working, thank you very much, we're working with Air New Zealand around a review of their current schedule. First and foremost. Secondly, the airport as a business is not closed to other opportunities. Okay, so the airlines will make decisions based on rational commercial data. They will not submit to political lobbying. They will not submit to posturing. They are there to make money, and they will make a decision on that basis. So the objective of the airport is to really sell the broader Rotorua story, and there's a strong linkage with the likes of Michelle and her team at DR around that, around the future landscape for tourism, and around understanding businesses' requirements and working with the current airline and potentially other opportunities that are out there to ensure that we have a schedule that works for key businesses and stakeholders. Again, we are just to state, I'll go back on a query I've received through the course of the year, would we subsidise? There is no intention for the airport to subsidise airlines coming into Rotorua into the future. Okay, to be very clear on that point. Rotorua needs to stand on its own 2 feet. We have a growing tourism industry, and the airlines, through rational decision making, will get to a point in which other opportunities open up for business and for the broader community. So our goal in leading this is to really facilitate accurate, clear conversations between ourselves and the broader airline community to ensure that we keep providing greater seating capacity and a more, I suppose, a broader airline schedule into the future. The last point is just around advancement of opportunities relating to development of the broader airport land precinct. So, as I've signalled on a couple of previous occasions, the airport has 104 hectare land holding. If we look at the aeronautical side of the business, we would use around 60 hectares. So there is a development opportunity, a parcel of around 40 hectares, which we are working with council and a couple of consultants to understand the size of the opportunity. But certainly the intent of the management and the board is to move that opportunity forward into a development feasibility, and ultimately into releasing the value of that land as part of a broader airport precinct. One of the key commercial benefits of that is it does start to move the dial from a reliance on straight aviation related income into a balance on non-aviation related income also. So again, if we look at a number of the most successful international and regional airports across the globe, they tend to have a stronger balance in terms of aeronautical versus non-aeronautical income on their balance sheet. So again, that's a big focus for us for the next 12 months.
Mark, I'm just going to accept 2 questions that have popped up.
Sure.
From firstly the Worship and then Councillor Bentley, and then we'll carry on.
Thank you.
Your key priorities, so I'm happy for him to carry on.
Was your question on this slide? Okay. Please carry on, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the next SOI priority around an airport to be proud of, we're in the midst, or at the back end, sorry, of the terminal redesign project, in which we're just lining up a cost assessment. That process will conclude at the end of September with a recommendation to the board to move the project forward. The next point is around a review of concessionaire requirements. So within that, there's a significant opportunity as part of the terminal redesign to look at the breadth of concessionaire, and I'm talking about generally food and beverage opportunities within the terminal, and ensuring that that what is provided meets an acceptable standard of retailing from our perspective, and provides a broader retail offering that matches the needs of the public. The third point is we are looking to include a business travel lounge within the new terminal. So again, over a period of time, there has been a lengthy conversation with Air New Zealand around the inclusion of a Koru lounge within Rotorua. We still fall below their threshold in terms of having that lounge. What we're keen to do, though, is to work with them to provide an opportunity for their Koru and frequent flyer customers to utilise a lounge that could be a proprietary lounge that's run by the airport, and with food and beverage concessionaires that operate out of the terminal. So that is currently a work in progress. We've had strong engagement from Air New Zealand around the opportunity, and that, from their perspective, could typically work, for example, on a voucher system, in which a frequent flyer may be provided with a voucher over the check-in counter, which could be redeemed within the lounge itself, that type of approach. So it's exciting, because I think what it will do is it again provides an opportunity, certainly for the frequent and business traveller, to have a facility to meet their needs. And the last point is around Ride the Runway. So again, that was, with the challenges of certainly weather this year, again, in which it was delayed a day, that was successfully facilitated, as were visits for a number of community groups and schools over the course of the year. Just to the second and last slide, manage and maintain assets to a high standard. So a couple of key things here. Firstly, we're undertaking an end-to-end procurement review. So that's really around ensuring that the vendors that are providing the services to the airport have been tested in terms of their pricing. It also gives us an ability to actually rationalise the number of vendors. And from a working capital perspective, getting them into a cycle which is efficient from our perspective in terms of payment terms. It also brings with it an opportunity to ensure that they're all meeting our health and safety criteria. So that review will take place over the ensuing 6 months. As a result of it, we are looking for gains in relation to expense minimisation. Data aggregation. So as a preamble to the airport master plan, we're going through an aggregation program at the moment from a GIS perspective around assembling all operational plans. So that's from within the airport itself, around the detail on runway, as-built, etc., right through documenting more accurately our airspace. As development grows around the airport, we're getting called on far more frequently to provide advice and views on development applications. So we're looking for this repository of data to help that process, and ensuring that from our perspective we preserve our airspace, and from the community's perspective they understand the limitations in which they need to operate within. And the last point, which I've touched on earlier, is really around the design and evolution of the master plan. From a master planning perspective, the key here is for the airport to move to have a very clear vision in terms of the future development opportunity for the airport land holding, and to ensure that the community very clearly understands that aspiration. And just to wrap up the SOI comments, again, as I've stated earlier, we've had very strong performance in FY17, and that's been delivered through strong revenue growth, and on the flip side of it, prudent cost management. As a business, we're well positioned to fund the proposed terminal and fire operation development projects going forward. And the last comment is around the upside opportunity for growth of broader airport revenue streams. Again, looking into the master plan and looking into the opportunity for a number of businesses that are currently operating within the airport and options for businesses to come to the airport, there's a significant opportunity around providing them a better economic environment to operate within, and from an airport perspective to be the benefactor of those incremental revenue streams. So FY18 and beyond, just to run through these very quickly. Flight sector growth and schedule development. So as I've alluded to earlier on, we're locked into a conversation at the moment with Air New Zealand around their schedule. And more broadly than that, we are exploring broader opportunities around airline servicing into Rotorua. We have the terminal and fire operations projects to move to a phase of implementation. We have the airport master plan that we are looking to document and socialise across council and the broader community. We have the procurement review, which is designed to deliver cost efficiencies and management efficiencies around the vendors that service the airport. We have a number of revenue growth initiatives that have a degree of commercial sensitivity I won't go into, but there is a strong commercial plan around the growth of aviation, and I'm talking about general aviation and around non-aviation related income streams. Continuity of the great work that the team is doing across the broader airport operations around really running a safe and efficient airport. And the last point, not to be forgotten and amongst all of it, is ensuring that we can provide the customers with an equivalent and, more importantly, better experience in utilising Rotorua Airport going forward. So that ends the presentation. We're very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I'd like to open up for questions with Her Worship, followed by Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mark, and I really like seeing a sharper focus now and your strategy. I suppose the only aspect, and we've got John McRae here too and Michelle from Destination Rotorua, just you talk about the discussions with Air New Zealand about scheduling. I think it's the only issue about the airport. People accept weather delays, but it's the scheduling that we are constantly being asked, you know, what are we doing about it? And when I look at the capital investment in Queenstown, you can see that they've got a schedule advantage. Good on them, but they have got a schedule advantage, and yet we're still trying to get that north-south penetration with our schedules. Do you think we're getting really anywhere there?
Look, I certainly believe there's strong progress. Look, at the end of the day, we move 250,000 people.
Yeah.
We don't move 3 million or 30 million. So there's some reality around our size and scale and our ability to exert influence into the market. Positively, we do have a growing market, and there is definitely upside from a domestic and international perspective around strengthening linkages in and out of Rotorua. So, Namir, I think your points are very valid, and it is, if there was an item that's discussed around the board table with frequency and rigour and challenge, it is certainly scheduling.
Yeah.
So it is a constant point of focus.
Yeah. And do you think the discussion about a potential opportunity for another airline might be an influencer there?
Look, I believe there is. I think we've got to be very careful around when we talk about other airlines coming in, because we have a very small pie, 250,000 people now. The reality of a significant airline and playing in that sandpit is unrealistic. Simply, they're not going to go and compete for that number of people. And if you look at the cost economics of setting up an operation into Rotorua with a back-of-house operation, it is expensive, and simply the size of the pie would not warrant the second airline. Where the opportunity exists, though, is the linkage from an international to domestic perspective around bringing more people into Rotorua. So if that airline brought incremental numbers in, the pie will get bigger, which may create a broader opportunity for other options in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report, Mark. My question is about the aesthetics of the airport, in that the southern end of the airport looks like what it is, just a rubbish dump. Do you have any plans in place to tidy that up and get it more presentable for the ratepayers?
Yeah, it's to be fair, it's not our land. So I think first and foremost, in terms of the land that's administered by the airport, we have a fairly rigorous mowing and maintenance program around ensuring that the boundary from our security fence to the runway is maintained. So that's number one. The land I think you're referring to was the defunct Eastern Corridor, a number of those blocks, of which there's about 15 on our boundary, are administered by Colliers on behalf of NZTA. So that land is currently in the process of offerback as part of a broader public works divestment program. So your point is fair, and we have concerns over the presentation in Standard 2 because it reflects negatively on the airport. But unfortunately, as I say, our hands are tied to a degree in terms of an inability to maintain it. But I can certainly take your point up with the property manager and NZTA around presentation. It's not an issue.
We understand and appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. I just have a question. Now that the Eastern Arterial has been removed, the overhead bridge that was at the southern end created a flight restriction for planes taking off from the airport. Has that restriction been taken off the airport? Perhaps you can't answer it right at the moment, but it's something perhaps you may need to have a look at.
Certainly, yeah. Look, I'm not aware of it. To be honest, so I'd need to have a look into it. But from what I gather, there's certainly at the southern end of the runway, in terms of the way it exists at the moment, there were no penetrations into the flight path. I'd be very surprised if that solution was advanced, given the sensitivity around flight gradient.
It was an overhead bridge.
Right.
And it did create restrictions to your southern exit.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Mr. Martin, those concerns that you had were resolved 3 years ago. So I don't think they still exist, but it's worth us having a look at.
Yes, and we will check that. Councillor Rotorua.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. It's been interesting, and kia ora for the work that's being done. But my comment is actually, or a question is possibly actually really to our Mayor, to Stevie. Stevie, we've just seen that Air New Zealand has made a tremendous profit in the last 12 months, and good on them. But it's our airline, taxpayers' airline. We own the government is the majority shareholder. So I want to see us actually. And so, what's the commitment of the government to supporting our vision and our economic growth for dream and aspirations for our community? And what do we do as politicians after the election? Because I really think we have to start saying, come on, we want a share of the pie. And it's not yours to do, Mark, possibly your board, but I think we need a strategy around that.
This is a discussion item every time I meet our MPs, all of them. I've gone to every Air New Zealand strategy meeting with mayors. We all share a sense of frustration about the approach, really, that is one of a commercial airline. And we're assured that the flight scheduling will change once the volume is there and a tipping point occurs. So that's why I've really valued the strategy with Destination Rotorua aligning with the Chamber of Commerce and the airport company to actually have these scheduling discussions face-to-face with Air New Zealand. It is a real frustration. I share your view that we need to probably take it even further.
Thank you for elaborating on that, Your Worship. We have Councillor Gould, followed by Councillor Hunt.
Madam Chair, thank you, Mark, for your report. Yesterday morning, I took a visitor from outside Rotorua to the airport for the 8:05 flight to Wellington. He was surprised that Rotorua didn't have a Coro lounge. He regularly travels on Air New Zealand, but I did notice myself that the airport was very tidy, very clean, and the staff did a fantastic job out there. I'll give you that. With the tender process you're talking about for 3 months' time for the U building, for the U operations and fire station, of approximately just under $5 million. Are you going to have to get a term loan for that payment, or are you going to use part of your 3.5 million from the BNZ loan, which means that your profit this year is $614,000? Does that mean you're going to have to find the other 900,000 from somewhere else?
Yeah, so without getting into too much granular detail around how we fund it, there's two key pools, and I will make a comment in relation to caveating the quantum of the council loan. So the $15 million we're not looking to enhance or change. The second point is, from a bank balance perspective, we're currently holding in what we're calling a development account around $1.5 million of surpluses that we are continuing to build, and the $600,000 we've built through to the end of June, and that we continue to drive and strive for month in, month out, proceeds from an operating perspective are going into a development account. The Carl facility itself at $3.5 million certainly does provide an opportunity for us to tap into and fund the development program. So the two key pots that we are looking to fund development from are firstly the Carl at $3.5 million, and secondly the utilisation of any cash surpluses that we build through our operations over the course of the next 12 months. And those that cash flow and the modelling is all articulated in detail within the broader SOI.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll be able to ask more detailed questions at the AGM in November. Councillor Hunt, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you, Mark. Mine's a bit left of field, but it's really about the private jets that come in and as part of your development. So have we seen an increase, and how do we market that particular aspect of the airport?
Yeah, so the broader private jet, look, we don't monitor specifically private jets. We monitor GA activity, and we are looking to wrap a broader strategy around GA activity into the future. If you look at the volume of aircraft operating out of Rotorua, which is around 6,000 a year, versus the opportunity that is out there in terms of airspace and the lack of usage, there is a significant gap and opportunity around enhancing GA, so general aviation. So we've got a number of options that we're looking at the moment on that. I can't go into detail on it because we're in the midst of discussions, but the GA activity in general terms is fairly consistent. In terms of growing that pie, specifically around jets, private jets, we are co-funding with Michelle the luxury or the top-end value review. So as Michelle touched on in her presentation, that's a key strategy for DR to drive that piece of research. From an airport perspective, we would be a benefactor in terms of receiving more aircraft and potentially private jets. That gives us one landing fee and, more importantly, significant holding income through those aircraft being parked and positioned at the airport. So it is top of mind for us, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning, Mark, in presenting this presentation, and if possible I would like to share the PowerPoint with councillors after.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'd now like to call on John McRae, who will be presenting for Infracore Limited, and thank you for your patience this morning, John.
Mr. Chair, has the presentation come through from our team for Infracore?
We're just checking.
We'll just take a minute to go off topic, if that's all right for 1 minute.
Certainly, while we find your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of one of the items that just came up in Michelle's presentation was around talent attraction, and just wearing my chamber hat for a minute. This is a really serious problem for the business community. I know in my own business and everyone I talk to, talent attraction is a significant constraint, which is actually making all of us push a lot of work out of this economy. So instead of being able to employ people to do the work, we're actually having to shift the work. And there's probably not one employer of work that I know of that isn't doing that at the moment. So it's a real challenge for us, and it's an opportunity lost, because that's, employment is the most significant contribution to our economy. So what we're doing at the Chamber is actually getting a vacancy list right across all our members and all employers to understand what vacancies are out there at the moment and what future vacancies there are as well. What we want to do that is actually work with Michelle and her team to then put that into a very clever package to take to the likes of Auckland and so forth, and actually start selling Rotorua as a place to live. So that package is going to be, around, obviously, housing is going to be one of our key snags, but obviously the lifestyle, housing and education. So that's sort of phase one of attracting talent. Phase two is also looking at doing things a little bit differently within our city, and that is offering cadetships. So right across, we just want a standard program. It's old style, but it worked in the past, and it's something we want to re-engage, which is having cadetships, which are about having of 310k, and the difference is really just an accounting issue. Would the accounting issue have changed the position we're in? I doubt it would have had any impact whatsoever. The only disappointing part of that is we were reporting 310 at the last quarter, and we should have been reporting 70k. To me, being an accountant and chairperson, you can imagine that I threw my toys out of the cot quite severely when I got the news. But after picking up my toys and sort of moving on, the reality is what we can learn from that is that our systems that we've got in place are not fit for purpose. And we're working with Thomas and the team to help us get through that. If we're going to be a successful, high-performing organisation, obviously information to the board, to the management team, that is timely, that is relevant, is critical to our performance. So that's an issue we have been aware of. We've actually just escalated it in terms of priorities to get fixed. There's a little bit on that later in my presentation as well. So despite that, the 70k I'm still pleased with, because last year we had a loss. This year we've still gone through massive change in terms of trying to change the culture of the organisation, trying to get out there in the marketplace and actually being successful in the marketplace in terms of achieving our customer satisfaction criteria. Of which, in terms of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 race satisfaction ratings, managed to have a positive response on all 12, so 100% positive return on that. One of the key things that we've learned from that is that our communication between the funder has to be a lot more customer centric. We've come from a tradition of just receiving work, doing work, and not being intelligent about that, might be the best way of saying it. So with the change in the organisation comes a change in culture and the way that we do business. So that is being, as I say, a lot more customer centric. That means that understand what the customer is actually wanting to achieve, as opposed to just, for example, cutting the lawns. So I'll give you a little example here. Instead of looking at a park, as you see behind you there, and making sure that the grass is this high, that we're actually looking at the whole park and making sure that the whole park is at a quality standard. And that sounds pretty basic, and you think, well, why aren't you doing that? But you've got to remember, we've got some guys within our organisation that have been there for 30 odd years, and their focus has been on how long is the grass, as opposed to how well does that park look. So we've got to make a change, and the conversations that we're having with our funders, and particularly council management, have been really, in my view, quite exciting. I think we've turned a real significant corner in terms of the way we think about doing our work, the way that we think about contracting for the work. So the future for us is good. And I say that because if we've got a different mindset, we've got a different culture within the organisation, we know that not only are we going to provide a great service for this city, we can also provide a great service for other cities and other funders. So that's a little bit of context. So while we have these customer satisfaction ratings, which are tick boxes and we tick away, there's a greater picture that sits just right underneath it. Just feedback from our outside contracts in terms of Scion and Tauranga City. We've actually got incredibly good feedback from both operations, and in both cases we've done better than budget as well. So our place in the market is getting stronger, and we're actually performing well. So I'm really pleased with how those contracts have gone. You'll notice that the rebranding has taken place, and you'll see a number of our trucks with the Infracore and all the rest of it starting to take place. Infracore as a brand is starting to grow in its own right. The mention of it, particularly in Tauranga City, has got strong and positive vibes with it, and that's the feedback that we've had back from council. We've picked up quite a bit of work because of that out of Tauranga, which is stuff that has already been contracted out, but we've been given preference, and without having to tender for it, it's been automatically provided to us, given off the back of the good work that we've been doing. So it's really positive. The brand is starting to create its own value. Just moving to systems, I mentioned before that systems have been tripping us up a little bit. Obviously, we can never be a high-performing organisation if we don't have the fundamentals of good information and good systems providing information out to the team and back to the, management team and board as well. So we're looking at new field service management systems. We went out and tendered for this in the Q3. The pricing and the proposition that came back from those providers was not right. So we've gone back to the market again with a lower tier, simpler questionnaire to try and get that second tier level of field management system. And likewise with our finance system, we're working with council just to see what is going to be the best way for us. There's obviously a bit of work to go through there. The key there is just to try and keep it as simple as possible for us. So in terms of financial position, in terms of income from council and core work, we were down on budget by a couple of $100K. Minor projects were up by a couple of $100K, and major projects up $100K. Other sources were up $300K. So in total, our income was up by $100K compared to what we were budgeting. Slightly over on expenditure and a few other bits and pieces, which meant that we were down $200K, effectively being our $70K profit on budget, that is. So in conclusion, strategic progress, I think we're making some significant changes, and go back to my comment about communication. The communication between funder and us is strengthening, and I must say that I've taken a key interest in that, and will be leading that myself to make sure that that continues to be the case. We've still got areas of cost efficiency, but we've made some huge strides in this place. We are commercially competitive now. We're in winning work. We haven't won it all, but we are winning it, so that's a good place to be. And through that, we've been able to pick up some external work and get real value added to our brand. My last slide. From my point of view, from here on, as well as all the other stuff that I've said, my main focus is to ensure that we've got a high-performing team. And high performance has to be defined in the context of what our organisation is. But a high-performance team is one that's going to deliver the same standard or the same quality of work time and time and time again, so that the brand Infracore, people know and understand the value of what that organisation is and will want to contract with us. So we've got a lot of work to do in this space. It's not going to happen overnight. And what I'm pleased is that my management team at this stage have got their heads around, you know, the concept of a high performance team and actually believe in it. And now it's a case of driving it down through the various tiers. It was good. I attended where all 150 staff were at a meeting, and we were putting a lot of these concepts in and delivering these concepts to the team of 150. And you could see some people, yep, absolutely, the body language is saying I'm completely resistant to change. But there's a lot of people in there who are going to be really vital to support this change and actually are starting to believe in it as well. So on the whole, you know, it's been, last year we made a loss, this year we made a profit, but in this year we've made a huge amount of change within the organisation that sets us up for a really strong and positive future. Thank you. That's. Just to say though, I haven't got Tim with me today. He's over in the UK, so apologies there. So don't get too operational on me, or else you'll just lose me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. We'll open up to questions with your worship.
Thank you, John, and I think that's a great result because we're always interested in trends, and I like hearing that you're not just doing levels of service, but you're looking at the whole picture on the product that you're delivering. So that's a really good change too. Though we do deal as councillors often with my verge and my drain. We get those sort of operational issues. But lifting it to your other comments before you started about Infracore, you've got this increased employment opportunities, you know, as one of your areas that you have targets for. Is there opportunities there in Infracore for the cadetships that you mentioned a little bit earlier? Because that was where so many of our people actually started to learn skills that have actually put them in good stead now in other businesses around our district. So is there a chance for cadetships there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's on the top of my list, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Because we were looking at, was this just a purely commercial service delivery agency, or was it also a social service delivery agency? And if you can bring that opportunity for work experience and work in there, I think you're meeting that requirement.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't see it as a either or. Yeah. I think it's a case of making sure that we're getting both. So, you know, the cadetship actually does do that, you know, and I do it from within Deloitte. You know, I think about, you know, those cadetships are profitable for me. Yep. You know, that's the simple reality of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But it's also doing a lot of there's a lot of social benefit from actually putting that sort of program in place as well. And the same applies to Infracore. We can do it in a way that is profitable as well as, you know, creating a lot of social good from having those sort of programs in place.
Thank you.
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report, John. Can you just clarify for me this $300,000 accrual deficiency caused by the payroll system? Is that included in the 700,000 from that cause that we heard about at the last operation, the monitor meeting, or is this in addition to? The reason I ask that question is if it's 700,000 for all 540 FTEs we've got in this organisation, it would seem that 300,000 is rather disproportionately high for your 150.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to the first part of whether 300k is part of the 700k or not. That'd be for someone else to answer. It probably is disproportionate because we've got the larger chunk of staff that's going through the payroll system. So it could well be, but I don't actually know the number definitively. I know the number for Infracore, I don't know what it is for the council overall.
Councillor Kent, perhaps when Thomas returns we can get him to answer that question for you. Were there any other questions? No? Well, I think you actually covered that very well verbally. Oh, sorry, we have Mr. Stanton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, John. Around your comments around the customer-centric and enhancing the product and performance, that's great because there are examples that we've seen over the past year which perhaps don't meet the expectations of some in the community. And can that be achieved within existing budgets, or is that going to require additional budgeting to achieve that?
We're doing it within existing budgets. To do that, though, we do have to have revenue coming from other sources other than council. It's not going to happen overnight, as you can realise. You know, culture change within an organisation does take some time. But I'm really pleased with the speed that it has happened. So, in answer to your question, yes, within existing budgets, we've got no choice. You can't just, you know, get money out of thin air. So we do it within existing budgets, and this is a means to not just our survival, but our success. Yep.
Thank you. And I had a comment, slight question, but you did mention about the culture change, which I think is obviously significant in this, with the system, with you mentioning the systems in place and not fit for purpose. I think that really knocks the issues that come out in this report on the head. So I think there are very interesting changes that could be made to make it a high-performing organisation, as the goal is. But regards to the culture change, you mentioned from the leadership really driving that downwards and infiltrating that down. Is there the opportunity to find change leaders in the lower tiers of staff and actually encourage them to start promoting the change in culture from a peer-to-peer perspective?
So the simple answer is yes and yes. And in fact, we have to, and Tim and the team have already identified people who are within the organisation who can be those change leaders, but we don't have enough of them. So we've employed just recently another couple of gentlemen who have got the right skills and would have the right influence within the organisation to actually start doing that change, that exact change that you're talking about. So just even a couple of people like that will have a huge impact. But as we work through this, we'll identify there are probably other places within the organisation that actually need that type of person as well, filtered in.
Fantastic, and that's good to hear. I will take one final question from Mr. Waru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, John.
Kia ora.
Just in terms of that culture change, it's a big deal, and it's not an easy job, as you know. But so, what's the end game? What's the end game for the culture change for you?
Look, I think the end game is perfection, which we'll never get there. But that's the way I'm kind of designed anyway. We'll strive for perfection, and the goal for perfection will always shift ahead of us. Where I think we start getting some real tangible measures around how we're going will be that we are winning a lot of work, and our bottom line is looking very strong. So in terms of real metrics, it will be, you know, income and profitability for the organisation. In terms of brand value, we'll see a significant lift in our brand value as well. So the answer is a bit vague, but what I want to do in the next couple of years is actually show that this organisation is performing, and you'll see it in those sorts of metrics that will come through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. That concludes our reports from the council-controlled organisations. So if I can please have... Yes.
With your forbearance, Madam Chair, I just would like to ask the Chief Executive a question before we move on to the next topic. And that is to why we have no report on our other council-controlled organisation, Terax, who also had statements of intent and was supposed to be reporting to us quarterly.
there's a number of changes going on in the TRX board at the moment, and so they will be reporting back, but their report will be slightly delayed.
Know some time frame that may come?
No, I need to come back.
Okay, that's fine, that'll come back. And I assure you, Councillor Kent, when Thomas does return, we'll answer your question as well, so it hasn't been forgotten. So we now will move on to recommendation 2, stopping of part of Westbourne Avenue and disposal. Can I call for a mover? Thank you, Mr Martin. Seconder, Councillor Hunt. And that the report stopping of part of Westbourne Avenue and disposal be received. So I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. I'll just get our Chief Executive, Jeff Williams, to comment beforehand, and welcome Stavros to the table. We'll get you to overview shortly.
Thank you, Chair. And committee members, I just want to foreshadow an invariable question that will be raised during the discussions around these two papers. And that is, why have you got two papers which have property disposal implications without the property disposal policy being finalised? The answer to those two questions are these. Firstly, when you see the nature of these properties, they're properties that actually cannot be disposed of in normal means, that are unsuitable for development, and effectively the only options for them is to look at some amalgamation of title into surrounding neighbours. They don't either have the size nor their topography makes it totally unsuitable for them to be used for any purpose whatsoever usably. Secondly, why have we had a delay on the property disposal policy? That will be, or was to be scheduled actually for this committee meeting. Unfortunately, it did require some further legal review externally that we wanted to put it through, and we're also looking to, at this point, to amalgamate some aspects or some options, if you like, that we've picked up from Hamilton City Council. So I'm told that it will now actually come on to the next agenda of this committee meeting, so you can expect to see it there. Sorry, my apologies, it's SPNF.
Okay, thank you for that update, Jeff. And so I'll now invite Stavros to speak to this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My Chief Executive sort of outlined the broader context of the property policy. Those two properties both fall into sort of a very similar category. We are holding some properties under the designation of road reserve. We have an ongoing program to ask the question, do we currently need those road reserves, or are we likely to need them in the future for asset optimization? And where the answer is no, we're exploring opportunities to either work with interested parties or to put into the market. Though both of these properties are similar, the first one in Westbourne is a very small triangular section at the end of the cul-de-sac. One of the neighbours there has been using it as a de facto encroachment license, which they have expressed a wish to acquire it. We don't need it, we don't anticipate to need it, so we suggest that it's disposed. The second property, again, it's on a similar basis. It's a steep, flood-prone and erosion-prone land. We're highly unlikely to need it in the future for road reserve purposes, and we recommend that though both of these properties are road stopped and the appropriate agreements are reached with the interested parties to negotiate the transfer of those properties to them, provided that the normal local government requirements for notification have been exercised. Happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Stavros. Now we will take this as two, so we'll start if anyone has questions on Westbourne Avenue disposal, and then we'll go on to Hamidona Road and disposal. Were there any questions for this one? Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm not sure if Stavros is the right person to answer, but in future subdivision design or planning, are we sort of checking that we don't end up with these little rats and mice bits and pieces hanging off lots that we don't need and we have to maintain as a council? I don't know who can answer that.
Probably I will, because subdivision approval process when it comes to land development and as related to infrastructure goes through my department, my group. And obviously, yes, the answer is we try to learn from past experiences and try to avoid similar mistakes in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Kent, followed by Mr Waru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. If the policy on this issue needs to go to our other committee, why is this committee determining that we should or should not be stopping a road? Surely that should also be a policy matter.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll just get Jeff to elaborate on that.
Councillor, I think you're raising a point. I think the question that staff have asked is this an operational matter or a strategic matter? And I think given the nature of these properties, if they've elected to see it as being an operational concern.
Okay, Mr Waru.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, and Jeff, thank you for your kōrero at the start there. It's cleared up a few questions I did originally have. I guess the only question, I suppose, that goes across both sections is, will they be sold at the market rate?
The transfers cost will be negotiated by our property department, and obviously a market valuation of these lands will be undertaken.
That was just one of the parties that came from Te Tato.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Gould, followed by Mr Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report, Stavros. With recommendation 2, with selling that piece of land to section title number 21, there's not going to be any comeback for council in the future. Am I right at that? Once it's sold, you're happy for the sale to go ahead. And the second question is, why didn't you do the same sort of deal with property number 38? Because there is also a piece of land very similar to 21.
First question, obviously we would, for us to recommend road stopping for that trapezium shape in a piece of road reserve, we don't anticipate any future problems with that, neither in terms of utilities or function of the cul-de-sac. The second question, why didn't do a deal with the number 38? Like any normal transaction, has to be a willing seller and a willing buyer who have not had an interest from the buyer at the moment or interest in that respect. And if they approach us, we may explore the possibility with them.
Thank you, Mr Martin.
Thank you. Stavros, will section 405 on Pukehangi Road be notified of what's taking place, because they do have legal access onto Westbourne Avenue?
I think that I assume all the directly affected parties will be, and when you go back into clause 6 of the report, community input, engagement and publicity, obviously we do have a primary responsibility to notify affected parties, and I will make sure that they're notified.
Because my point being, Madam Chairman, is if ever they wanted to put a granny flat onto that section, that's 403, they're entitled to come out to that back entrance onto Westbourne Avenue. So we don't want to hindrance someone. They must know exactly what we intend to do, because that's legal access at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, and it's a very fair point, so I'm glad that will be followed up. Thank you, Mr Martin. If there are no other questions, I will close off discussion for the Westbourne Avenue part. Fantastic, thank you. So we have moved Councillor Kent, seconder, Your Worship, I'll just read it, that the committee recommends to Council to stop that part of Westbourne Avenue as shown in this report, and point 3, that the committee recommends to Council to dispose of that part of Westbourne Avenue as shown in this report to the adjoining neighbour at 21 Westbourne Avenue when that road is stopped. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And we have Mr Biasini Tulia abstaining. Thank you. Moving on to recommendation 3, stopping of part of Hamurana Road and disposal. May I call for a second and mover to receive? Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Seconded Rotorua Tate. That the report of stopping of part of Hamurana Road and disposal be received. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Pardon? Yes. Yeah. Would you like to abstain for all of these? Yes, just for that. Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Martin for Hamidana Road disposal. Are there any questions on Hamidana Road in particular? No, straightforward. Well, then I'd like to call for a mover and seconder. Councillor Donaldson, seconding Councillor Hunt. I'll read that as well. That the committee recommends to council to stop that part of Hamidana Road as shown in this report. And point 3, that the committee recommends to council to dispose of that part of Hamidana Road as shown in this report to the adjoining neighbour at 973 Hamidana Road, Hamidana, Rotorua, when that road is stopped. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Yes, with the abstentions. Now we will stop for a quick 5-minute break before we follow on to the operational report for July. So we will come back in 5 minutes. Yes, that's fine. Thank you, everyone. We'll just get everyone to resume their seats, please.
No, we want another point.
Excuse me, everyone. We'll get you to resume your seats. Thank you. Kia ora and welcome back, everyone. Now we will start our operational report for July to August. We do have lunch at 12:30, so we'll see how we go through this, but I'm hoping we can finish by then. So may I please call for a mover and seconder to receive the operational report for July to August. Thank you, Councillor Rotorua Tate. Seconded, Mr. Waru. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. I'd like to invite Monty Morrison to elaborate on anything else you may want from your kaitiaki Māori.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morena tata. Look, I'm happy to take my report as read. Probably just to, it's already been highlighted since the announcement of the bilingual city, which is the last point that I made. There's been a huge number of requests coming from the community to assist, and we're working through those. But yes, the reaction has been hugely positive, not only in this community, but certainly and the other communities. Their reaction has been very, very positive. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I must definitely agree on that, Your Worship.
Response, actually, and I think the issue is one of our capacity to respond. Dave and I were at Red Stag yesterday, and they want to have a bilingual strategy there, and not Red Stag, at Timberlands, and they want a bilingual strategy and need help. So it's about us as councillors. If you could guide us about where we put all of these requests that we get through to whom, so that they can be picked up in the business case by Te Tato.
Yes, the response is that we've been obviously working with Te Tato, who are leading the project. They're aware of the pressures that we're under and the requests that we're being received. Two things are happening: the building of the strategy by Te Tato, which they're currently working with Te Puni Kokiri, and of course the day-to-day things of our operations and the work that needs to be done. So it's work on two fronts, and we're making our way through that. Yes, it's been a very pleasant and really an amazing reaction, a positive reaction to the announcement.
Councillor Kawate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I do, I share the enthusiasm, obviously, for the status of a bilingual city, a first for our country, Aotearoa, and I'm also mindful of some of the comments again by Terry Stevenson in his report, telling our stories, etc. And I have read in the newspaper, and it's come to my attention from others as well, and I'm sure other councillors have heard, is, this can come at a cost, and it shouldn't just be borne by council, because it's a shared expense, I believe, across a number of organisations who have a role in the promotion of our te reo Māori and the culture and everything like that. So can I ask, what is the strategy for that, Jeff? Have we got anything are we going to sort of cost this off? Because, it's not going to happen overnight, but have we looked at what that actually will involve in terms of additional revenue to put towards this, because we want it to be successful?
I'll let Jeff reply, but I think Monty may also be able to contribute.
Sorry, Monty, I'm sure you've got a lot to add, but through the chair, I think when you look at this strategy, there'll be three broad areas of investment required. One will be, it naturally will have some implications for us, and we'll be looking to include that into the LTP. Secondly, it will have the opportunity for central government partnerships, and I understand that there is actually discussions underway with Te Puni Kōkiri at this time as to what that could look like. And then thirdly, there will be investment from the private sector, as well as the likes of agencies like Toi Ohomai, all of whom are looking currently at what can they do and the sort of things that will be involved. So Toi Ohomai are looking at a range of courses being organised, which they will look at funding themselves, obviously, but we're looking to provide some revenue growth through students coming into those courses. But secondly, the private sector, we know that already a number of restaurants, as an example, have invested in upgrading their menus. That has ripple effects to us for translations, which we'll be looking to talk to central government. All of this has been built into a strategy at this time, which has been led by Te Tātou Board, in concert obviously with us, and that will be something that we'll be wanting to bring back to this organisation in the future.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora te whanaunga. Just the second bullet point. Aroha, my apologies, I didn't get to the pōwhiri for the 17 new staff, and so Aroha mai, I would have liked to have been there to support Deputy Dave's officiating that morning, so maybe I've missed it in an email or something coming up, but through you to Una, can we ensure that somehow we get the pānui?
Deduct his pay.
Yeah. I think I had a nephew or two who was sort of being welcomed, and it's like their uncle's not there to welcome them or something. But aroha mai.
Yes, and point well taken. Mr. Bisini Tule.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora e te rangatira. This is more just an acknowledgement of the recent passing of Karawa Jim Gray, our kaumātua, and also Tere o Kahu, Rex White, who's lying up in Ruatahuna, and he passed away Monday, and his burial will be tomorrow. And in particular, Rex gave so much, and our cousin Celia Rakuraku, Gus, gave so much to our local community through Kapaka, and they'll be sorely missed through our kura and our Kapaka community.
And thank you very much for raising that point. It is very nice to bring it here to the table. Yes, Mr. Waru.
Kia ora anō tātou, kia ora Madam Chair. Just in terms of the bilingual city thing, yes, it was actually, I suppose the reaction has been huge actually, because I'm being the one translating most of the requests, and that's just part of the job, because we don't want to lose that role. So that's awesome. But currently, I think next week we're going to have an actual meeting with between Te Tatau o Te Arawa me TPK, as we're presenting, trying to shape this business case. It's actually a business case that we're putting forward to TPK, and then we'll go out and get other things. So not to put everything on the council, but in terms of internally, I think there's still council will do that. But that's why I was quite interested in John's kōrero this morning about culture change. It's all about that at the moment. So just wanted to give an update, and I'm sure the RRC as well as our partner will be involved in that kōrero as well. Kia ora.
Can I just finally say, in terms of the bilinguals, and just following on, Rawiri is one of, we've put together a pool of reo specialists, of which Rawiri is one, and we're actually meeting with them in Anata next Monday. So, and then obviously to progress that so they can do their meetings with TPK.
That's great. Now, I think Councillor Maxwell did have one more question before.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one more question through you to Monty. as an elected representative, received invitation to go to the next Te Maruata Hui, which is for elected Maori councillors, and that's being held in Rotorua. And so the question is, did you receive an invitation as well? And did our other fellow members? Because the last one that was held in March, Porto and I went up to it, and it was a well-represented hui there of over 40, 50 people from all over the country. And this is the second follow-up one.
The short answer is not yet.
Not yet, okay, so might have still come to us then.
And that's a good point to bring up, so we'll make sure that information is found and circulated to those who may be
Because
interested.
that's in 2 or 3 weeks' time, September 22nd.
Thank you very much, Monty. I'd now like to call on the strategy group. We have JP presenting and Ingrid also joining, who will provide a council communication update. Thank you, JP.
Morning, everyone. Just as an intro, we just got two things I'd like to sort of highlight within the strategy update, councillors. The first is obviously a communications update by Ingrid, and then I'll just invite Rosemary to come and join us. We're just going to go through a short video which details some of the work being undertaken within the sustainability portfolio, and then towards the end I'll just happily answer any questions we may have specifically about the report before you. Probably the last thing I would just want to add before I hand over to Ingrid, councillors, is just what's not included here is that Una has been working with the chair of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee, Councillor Rotorua Tate, just on setting out a timetable of forums to work through the long-term plan process. So the intention there is that they will be looking to start next week on the 12th, so a bit of an introductory one to start with, and then the intention is tomorrow to start sending out the invitations, which lays out a program of forums over the next 2 or 3 months. So that information will be going out to you very shortly. So I'll just hand over to Ingrid to just go through a communications update.
Tēnā koutou katoa. This update is just a brief rundown really on some of the work that's been happening in the communications space to support the work that Council does and the decisions you make. What we're trying to achieve, ultimately, a community that's engaged with Council, working with us to achieve shared goals, and communications supports that. To achieve that, we need people to understand Council's direction and decision making, and that means we need them to be aware and well informed and to have the correct information about what Council is doing and why. With anywhere between 100 to 200 projects on the go across the organisation at any given time, that's a lot of communications ground to cover, and given what Council does impacts everyone in our community, not just ratepayers, we need to spread the net wide, and we're looking to achieve that by getting information to people where and how they want it. So some of the challenges we face, there are many different perceptions of council governance and services, efficiency and transparency. Reach, that's a challenge. While there's progression more and more towards digital, traditional communication methods are also still needed, so we're kind of straddling two worlds and needing to cover all bases. Increased demand on council communications, that's really ramped up in the past few years. We're managing and creating content for multiple council channels and collateral. There's increased demand from media, who are also now feeding multiple platforms. In the last financial year, we dealt with close to 500 media inquiries. That's an average of about 10 a week, which is a lot. In a previous organisation I worked for, there wasn't even an average of 1 a week. At the same time, we're supporting many of those projects being delivered across the organisation, as well as supporting engagement and planning processes like the LTP. Te Arawa Partnership and Rotorua Initiative. What does being a good partner mean in terms of communication, and how does that need to be reflected through our communications and communication channels? And that's something we're also working on at the moment to try and ramp that up.
to support the Bilingual City Initiative. It's a changing landscape, ever changing. We need to get information into the community where and how they want it, and that has changed, particularly in recent years, and it continues to change. That means we need to keep finding new ways and more ways and different ways to get information to people to get them engaged. So in the recent years in particular, we've sort of made progressive changes. We've progressively changed the focus of our communications and engagement, introducing new and additional ways to communicate and engage, and this is continuing. We've improved and increased the use of existing council channels, which council has invested in, such as the website. We're also making more use of community newsletters and communication networks out in the community through the likes of schools and iwi. We're being a bit more targeted in our communications versus a previous one-size-fits-all approach. Different channels reach different demographics, so that means they need different approaches. And the way people engage with council has changed. Communities are more directly involved in project planning and engagement and delivery. Projects like youth spaces, they're a good example. Community representatives and elected members are helping with and leading engagement. Our new online platform, Kōrero Mai, that's a new and different way for people to engage with council as well, and there's multiple ways they can do that on that digital platform. So that's a move away from really relying solely on the formal submissions process to taking feedback in many different ways and incorporating that into decision making. And in terms of transparency, we introduced live streaming. We now also, people can view media responses we received, or media inquiries and responses, as well as official information requests. Those are all available to the public online as well. So what else are we doing? A lot. We're continuing to focus on maximising council and community channels, getting information to people more directly, less reliance on traditional media channels which can't get the reach we sometimes need and want. Ongoing web improvements, we're beginning quite a major project which is going to refresh the content and look at ways we can maximise the use of what is our primary digital channel within the parameters of the platform. And that refresh will include looking at how we can improve the presence of key projects, portfolios and planning. We're looking for ways to better monitor and measure what's happening on our channels, and that can be quite difficult in the digital space. We want to improve our focus and explore potential benefits of additional channels. Facebook remains sort of the key preferred social media platform for most people, but Instagram now, we're increasing our use of Instagram to reach a different audience, and there are other channels which we can investigate. We're leveraging Kōrero Mai, which allows people to sign up for council updates to try and reach more people with our information, and that's provided the basis for our weekly e-newsletter database. That's now going to several hundred people every week. And we're seeing, as a result of that, increased visits to the website. For example, in August, there was an increase of 528 visits to the website directly from that newsletter. So that means that it hopefully means people are reading it and are interested in what's in it. We're looking at how we can increase our use of te reo on our website and our other communication channels and just in our communications generally. So we're looking to do some work in that space. And we are introducing a new bi-monthly community-focused council magazine that will be delivered to letterboxes across the district, with the first edition due to be delivered this month. We'll also be creating a digital version of that, and there will also be hard copies available for people who perhaps miss out. Some people don't have letterboxes, in council venues like here and at the library. So that this is a medium that other councils are using as well to try and reach people across their districts. Again, moving away from that reliance on traditional media to improving and increasing their own channels. So that's a snapshot of some of the changes, some of the work we're doing and that we've got planned, and we'll continue to look for new opportunities and experiment, review and refine as we go. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now open up for questions, Your Worship.
Thank you for that briefing, because it is so extensive. One of the issues that you haven't put up there, one of the tools that you've got is that Vision 2030 refresh, the one sheet, and I think all councillors should have it, both digitally and in hard copy, because I've been to 3 meetings lately where I've left it behind and I'm getting feedback that, so this is where you're going with your big moves and your projects, and they are raising questions back about the key moves and projects and the time frames. So I think every councillor would really benefit from having it, so that at all our community meetings we've got more and more to hand out. And the other bit of feedback, and it's just about how we name things in council. I am getting a lot of people looking at me a bit blankly about the terms that we're comfortable with, but spatial plan. And while we're trying to engage, and it's a huge document and it's a very important approach, I think they're not sure what it is, so they don't know what to engage on. And it's because we use the term that we're comfortable with, and I haven't honestly got another term for it, but it's place shaping, and it's sort of a place shaper document, and we've got to be careful we don't use our terms, because the community, they know the annual plan, they I think now know the long-term plan, but spatial plan, it's like, what is it? Thank you.
And I'd like to think hopefully that content can also be provided to our community board and Te Tato members as well. I do agree it will be very beneficial.
The one, excuse me, the one pager actually features in the first magazine, so hopefully that covers that off and we can have a look at the terminology.
We have Councillor Maxwell, followed by Mr Waru and Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I just want to pass a bouquet. Ingrid, tremendous what you and your department are working on, are achieving and striving to achieve even more. And even the nice heads up that you send out to us, sort of, even though it might not affect us, but it gives us an idea that Dave or some other councillor is working on something, but it just keeps us informed and pretty current. And also commend you for even wanting to increase Te Reo involvement there, and especially next week we've got Maori Language Week, and I'm sure there's various things that are happening, and I believe Mr. Heaney's coming in to take some sessions, and I was pleased to hear that Councillor Gould has signed up to attend some of those classes. So 2 bouquets, one to you and one to Councillor Gould. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Waru.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, and tēnā koe Ingrid, rawe. Hey, yeah, as you know, we're in the digital convergence era, and it's still it's ever evolving. I'm just wondering, has there been any thought to giving there's this new term that we've coined in the old communications bizzo, which is a multi-purpose content meaning delivering the same message but packaging it differently on different platforms for different target audiences. I kind of heard you touch on it, but I was just wondering if there's a little bit more to that plan.
That is one of the areas that we are really scrutinising at the moment, and I think that will bring some efficiencies for us as well. But yeah, I don't have, we are working on that, definitely.
Kia ora, I've just got a couple of other questions too, sorry. You mentioned you're getting the pānui out to 700 odd people. Has there been any thought of approaching other organisations with a database to actually distribute your pānui? It's just like an email-based thing too, so.
We do that, and if anyone we can think of who has a database, we do that from time to time. Through the e-newsletter, we have encouraged staff in the organisation who are working in portfolios to share with their the networks they've established through the portfolio. But always happy to get more organisations on board if you know of any that would share our pānui.
Ka pai mai. One last point, just a suggestion rather. When I look at that, our Rotorua's nui te kupu. Then we go to the bottom part, e reo Māori, and iti te kupu. Is there a way, in your fellas thinking to sort of make sure, kai te mana rite, ngā reo e rua, just put that into your thinking as you're doing these things, kia ora.
We did actually have a bit of a discussion on that, and the magazine will be a little bit of a work in progress. There's quite a lead-in time in terms of production, so we had to work quite quickly. But yeah, that has been a discussion we've had.
Ka pai, because it's really, it does send a message when you do things like that, even if you don't realise it. It is, you're asking anyone. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mr. Wari, for your good questions. Councillor Kent, followed by Rokawate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whilst on the topics of transparency and perception, I understand that Council has the NRB survey results that actually tell us what people think about what we're doing, and I would like to know when we're actually going to see them, please.
Thomas, are you able to answer that?
Councillor, it's correct. We do have that survey, and the results of that survey have been used to compile our end-of-year performance against our performance measures, which is the reason why we have the survey. And Audit New Zealand is currently in the building looking at those, and once they've completed and those results are finalised, the report will be released along with the performance measures in the annual report.
Thank you, Thomas. Councillor Rokawate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, there's been a whole range of, I suppose you could say, opportunities for people to be fully informed of council activities. What I do notice lately is, Ingrid, that people want the long story short. I'm not necessarily saying they want the sound bites or bullet points, but every time I'm speaking to somebody, and particularly the media, they say, oh, long story short, please. So, any little of those pointers that you can give me, that's fine, although I tend to go off on a tangent myself. But one of the things I was wanting to ask is that I'm not totally au fait with all of these platforms. And I just wondered if we could have, probably everybody else's, a little bit of a tuition and how to access things fast and know that if I'm directing somebody to something, I actually know what I'm talking about. Because there's a lot of, there's really quite a lot in all of the things that you've put up there, and I'm not totally au fait with them, because it seems as if there's something new being introduced every so often. So I just wouldn't mind a bit of tuition sometime. From
That's
you or
fine.
anybody else that wants to put their hand up.
We can arrange that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that suggestion. We will, I'll ensure that we work with staff and actually set up a workshop for us and give those times out for councillors and community board members. Thank you. Were there any other questions on the communications? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation, Ingrid. And JP will let you carry on with your strategy group update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just as Rosemary comes forward, councillors, just refer you to the bottom of page 33, We've just got a reference there to a lease that might be coming towards the SPNF committee for next week. We've actually had another legal review about whether that's required, and at this stage it doesn't look like we do need to create a lease for some improvements to be done on the front of the QE/Whariaraha site. So we were just going to have an arrangement there. So that was ahead of our legal review of whether that was required. So we're just got a process for that. Councillors, I'll just hand over to Rosemary just to talk through the video she's about to show.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So we discovered in Sustainable Living Strategy there's a lot of opportunities in the community to be talking about the strategy and what we do, but we didn't have a lot of collateral that was really useful and versatile to do that. And written resources are not as powerful as the visual ones. So we had the snippets done using existing footage in some places and new footage in others, and put together this video with Councillor Tapsell's assistance. So if you'd like to have a look at it, and then we can talk through what it's about a bit more, how we'll be using it. Yeah.
Rotorua is an extraordinary place with a unique natural landscape. The good health of our environment is essential to the sustainability and growth of the district. We want to ensure that Rotorua is known for its pristine environment, pure air, clean lakes and healthy people. Our sustainable living strategy has been developed with the community, for the community. And we'd love to share with you some of the exciting projects that are already underway. Mā te huruhuru, ka rere te manu. The Western Heights community is actively involved in the reinvigoration of the neighbourhood, including parks and reserve. The community has identified the elements for developing flexible, youth-friendly spaces on reserves, as well as free sports and recreation activities in these spaces. The initiative has been a great way to use underutilised spaces, to bring youth together and build relationships within the community. The My Backyard Garden project is about engaging families in sustainable living through growing their own food. With the help of a large number of volunteers, the Backyard Garden team built and planted 66 vegetable gardens and compost bins for families and kindergartens across Rotorua, using donated and recycled materials. To support these families during the first few months of having their gardens, they have been paired up with local gardeners organised by the Rotorua Local Food Network. This food network is a passionate group of people who have come together with a shared interest in growing and sharing produce and healthy food. Rotorua Lakes Council's Eco-Design Home Performance Advisor Service provides independent advice for improving, renovating and new home building projects. The aim is to increase community and industry awareness of innovative design for affordable homes that are energy and resource efficient. The advisor helps promote options such as the Healthy Homes program, which continues to provide subsidised insulation into homes to help reduce energy consumption and improve health. They will also work collaboratively with the Hot Swap program being offered by the Regional Council, which aims to improve air quality through upgrading domestic heating appliances. Situated in the Sanatorium Reserve on the edge of Lake Rotorua, our wastewater treatment plant is one of the pre-eminent nutrient plants in the world. The sludge produced is currently mixed with waste pulp mill fibre, vermicomposted and cultivated into land used for growing maize as a fodder crop. Rotorua introduced fortnightly curbside recycling in September 2016. Within 2 months, the volumes of recyclable materials being collected had increased by 20% for glass and 170% for other recyclables. This was reflected in an equally impressive reduction in the volume of waste going to landfill. The increase in recycling is great, but there is still more that we can do. Initiatives being considered to further reduce waste to landfill include improved organic waste management to minimise greenhouse gas production, and development of opportunities to turn waste into energy. Education is the key to changing behaviour, and Council is involved in a number of environmental education initiatives to avoid and minimise waste, such as parenting waste reduction workshops, composting and worm farm workshops, and also public water bottle filling stations and community gardens. The Skyway Urban Cycling Program is a key initiative towards reducing fuel use for transport. More people riding bikes will reduce vehicle movements on our roads, helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the impact on our roading infrastructure. In addition to being a healthy option, there's also an economic benefit through the creation of a tourism offering and making our city a more attractive lifestyle option for everyone. Other sustainable transport initiatives include urban planning to locate learning, work and shopping destinations within walking and cycling distances of residential areas. The use of digital communication platforms to reduce travel and public recharging stations for electric vehicles. Our sustainable living strategy has been developed with the community for the community. Tātou tātou, we together. To find out more, head to the Rotorua Lakes Council website. No, thank you very much, and I would actually like to take this moment to actually acknowledge my previous councillor, Janet Wepper. It was actually with her hard work that many of these projects started, and it is my pleasure to continue this work with my passion, but also with many other staff and community organisations involved in this. So yes, I'd just like to acknowledge Janet Wepper. Thank you.
So just to add a little bit more, the idea is to have some collateral readily available that we can use, be it if we're going to a home show, we're talking to a community, and I guess it also is reflecting that the strategy was very much around partnership and collaboration as well as leadership. So the projects being demonstrated there demonstrate it's not all about council. There's a lot of things that we work with others to happen in the community that we might even be just about an invisible partner, but are definitely have a hand in those outcomes. So I mean, I quite like the fact that it's quite a community-oriented filming and so on. We used existing filming from where we could and had new filming done where that was needed. And we also took while that was happening, we also had some drone footage done of the Sanatorium Reserve as a baseline for that reserve program. So there's some footage that we took the opportunity at the same time to get done to keep it within budget. Yeah.
Questions? Mr. Waru, thank you.
Kia ora anō tātou, kia ora Madam Chair. Thank you, Rosemary. That's good. Tāhua te whitiata. Just a question though, so you've put that beautiful video together, beautifully presented by the way, and how are you going to actually use that now?
Okay. Right. So one of the things is to put it on our website, but it's also we can actually separate the little clips into separate bits in social media. So if there's a particular topic we're encouraging discussion around, we can use those little snippets separately. As I talked about home shows before, sometimes we're talking to communities. What else did I have there? Our website, the Aquatic Centre, reception downstairs. There's a number of immediate places. The UN Global Compact, our website, our web page with them. It's quite a good little introduction for the international audience as well.
And just probably adding on to the presentation that Ingrid gave you as well, this is just part of that, us looking at the different channels and the different tools we use, and as Councillor Okawa-Tate said as well, some people just don't want to read stuff anymore, they just want to see a quick video clip about what are you doing, where and how, and this gives us the long version that we can then cut and use in different ways.
So that's also why it's got subtitles, so that it can be used with the social media. If you've not actually got sound on, you can still follow what's going on.
Yeah, and just to add to that, koro, and when I went back to that koro that I said to Ingrid about multi-purpose content, I think that that's beautiful and rawa te whitiata, but there could be other ways to present it. I suppose ki te hunga rangatahi. You know what I mean? So, same message, but just packaging it up different. So, you keep that in mind too. Kia ora.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you for that video. That was good. Actually, quite a lot on there in a short time. But the one I want to comment on is the recycling. So, before the question, I've got a statement and a confession. In actual fact, I opposed the going out of the rubbish bags for a long time, and video, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say I think it's one of the best things that have happened here. Our yellow bins and red bins and the bottles, and it's pleasing to hear how well it's going. So the question, we did get a lot of complaints when it first came out. Are there any now? Through who? Sorry.
Madam Chair, I'm just looking straight past you towards Stavros, who's probably the right guy to stop eating and answer the question.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think in November 1st or 31st of October, we have concluded 1 year of the new changes. And as the video indicated, that the early trends are very favorable, our recoverable materials are increasing. The initial issues about placement, collection, and operational anomalies have diminished. And on average, we think the contract and the services are progressing into business as usual. And now we will be considering the rural communities in the near future, but certainly we are achieving the milestones and the goalposts, initially, established for the services. Thank you.
Thank you, Stavros, and we can cover any more in detail questions of that when Stavros comes to the table for the infrastructure group section. Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a small one, but I think a fundamental one for this organisation. So the term tātou tātou, it's our motto. At the end of that video, when Councillor Tapsell pronounced the words, there was the printing tātou tātou OU. I think back to Rotorua, I think of Te Tātou Board, which is in here, it's AU. We had this debate. I don't know who's right, but we got taken to task about the word te hei in another video we'll see a bit later on today. And I think we need to really be careful around consistency and getting it right if we're going to be a leader in this space. I just raised that point.
That's a very good point, Councillor Donaldson. Mr. Waru?
Oh, it's more of a response to that kōrero, Madam Chair. You're spot on there, Dave. However, it's a dialectual thing. Tātou is te arawa. But to a more uniform way of spelling it is how you saw it up there. So I guess it's just about knowing where do we want to stand on that kupu. Both mean the same thing. So, koera, ka waihui kona. My preference is, of course, te rewa te arawa, but it's not wrong. So tātou it's most people would pronounce it tātou. It says it is dragged out, tātou. Te arawa is tātou, rātou, mātou, very quick. So that's what it is, and that's why we adopted te tātou o te arawa. Just put it in context.
Thank you, Mr. Waru. I think it's actually quite helpful for most of us who have had this question come up before. Were there any more questions for the strategy group? No? I will think. Yes. All of the strategy group from page 33.
Thank you.
Yes. Councillor O'Connor and then Councillor
Oh, thank you.
Donaldson.
It was just in the Neighbourhood Matching Fund, and I see there's been a good range of grants given out to various organisations, but I do see that there was one, and it was the Makoia Community Association, where they received a significant amount, which was actually quite significant. It was over and above what we would normally give out. To me, that's 3 or 4 other grants that could have gone to an amount that could have gone to other things. And I presume that we are aware that there are other organisations in town where you can go for funding at that level. That's all I'm saying, that's quite a bit. And yes, I just make sure that we know the other avenues for community grants in the city. Thank you.
Could I just explain that? The Neighbourhood Matching Fund has 2 levels of grant. There's the grant that's open all year round, and that is for up to $5,000, and we will take applications anytime they arrive, and we help people with those. And then twice a year we advertise the large round, and that has $30,000 in it. We don't often get applications into that. We've had 2 to date. It was...
Thank you very much.
And Makoia was the other one who's had a large one.
Yes, I wasn't aware that fell into the other category. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, followed by Mr Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you, and it's probably a question that Stavros has the answers for, but it's regarding Te Manawa, and the last sentence in that about the planning to educate the public about how to use the new shared space, which Stavros corrects me are zones, not spaces, at the Eco City presentation earlier this week by Jo Wills, she advised us that New Zealand transport law differs from other leading cities around the world where there are shared zones, in that vehicles have right of way over other users of shared zones, whereas in other parts of the world it's the other way around. And Stavros can give a bit more context, I think, which is important to be aware of.
Sorry, I'm behind you. Madam Chair, in New Zealand, the regulation for shared zones requires that a vehicle on a carriageway has to give pedestrian priority when that pedestrian is already on that shared zone space. The flip side of that is a pedestrian has a duty not to deliberately jump in the path of the vehicle and obstruct the path of the vehicle. So, but the priority is for the pedestrian. Priority in a shared zone is always to the most vulnerable, and that's what the conditions in New Zealand provide for.
Madam Chair, just adding to that, and Stavros' team have done an excellent job putting together some collateral which is intended just to help raise that awareness with our community. So there's some nice diagrams and pictures of the planned areas that are going up on the fences still, and will be available through other channels as well.
Thank you, Mr Martin.
Kia ora, Madam Chairman. Just picking up what Councillor Mary Packer had to say. I too was in that same sort of category as she was, but what did take place, and I congratulate your organisation for doing it, they invited all the community area groups to participate in the actual inspection of the change that would take place at the community, Makoia community. We came back, we had meetings, and we all endorsed it. We thought it was a brilliant idea. So I had the same feeling. But when we saw the overall picture of it, and I'm talking community in Ongataho, we said, cut the pie.
Thank you. Were there any other questions for this strategy group? No? Okay. Thank you very much, JP and Rosemary. So I'd like to invite Thomas Colley up, Chief Financial Officer, to speak about the business support group, which is from page 37 on. Thomas, if perhaps I may take this chance, I believe you've been updated on the question from Councillor Kent earlier. If you could please just respond to him now.
Certainly, Madam Chair. As always, Councillor, I only report Council's results, and Council's results don't include the CCOs, so the figure that John McRae talked about was the impact on his organisation and not the one that was reflected in our discussion earlier on Councilman.
Okay, so on that basis, what is the total cost of the accrual stuff up on the payroll across the whole organisation?
It would therefore be those two figures added together, Councillor. So, and I missed the total that John McRae said. So it was the 700,000 for council and and the number that
300,000 from Infracore.
So therefore,
how much from the airport?
So therefore, Councillor, it would be $1 million because we do not do the airport's payroll.
Do you do the DRM payroll?
That their impact is obviously recorded already in their result.
So how much are we talking in total?
Councillor, I'll have to confirm what the impact was for Red, if that's of interest to you, so I can confirm that with you later, once I find out.
Thank you, I would appreciate that.
Thank you for answering that, Thomas. You may continue with your presentation.
Unfortunately, Chair, I don't have a presentation or a video, so I'm open to questions at this stage.
Well, we'll take the report as read. Does anyone have any questions for the business support group section? Nope, must be pretty good job there, Thomas. Okay, so we'll go to the infrastructure group with Stavros Michael from page 39.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will take my report as read. I would like to raise or bring to your attention 3 or 4 main points. First of all is our ongoing work with our state highway corridors. Again, we continue to work on the program of ensuring that pre-tendering and tendering process take place this side of Christmas for the central corridor and the improvements on Sala, Tarawera, and the 4-lane to Isles Road. I'm sure a lot of you will be pleased to see that all our candidates, political candidates, last night they made some promises with regards to helping us achieving the 4-laning of Tinai all the way to the airport within the next 3 years, which is consistent with our efforts of the last couple of years, and I'm sure there will be more details coming out of that. Another item of highlight is work will progress now on Paradise Valley with a number of tenders, about 5 sites earmarked for remedial works following the storms in March and April. Again, for your information and knowledge, from time to time we get asked how come we have waited 4 or 5 months before we started works. I would like to emphasize that in our effort to reinstate damage from those storms, it was very important for us not to undertake unacceptable risks of losing the road altogether, because we did have a very wet winter. The groundwater table was very high, and obviously trying to do retaining walls on the side of a already damaged road, it would have been a very risky operation, and we opted to wait until the weather improves over the spring and the summer period to carry the works. So we anticipate between October and early next year, 2018, 5 or 6 significant sites will be rectified with the returning the road back to a 2-lane and future-proofing those weakened areas. The other item I want to bring your attention is our parking RFP. We have received 6 offers for our parking services. We are in the middle of the process of evaluating the processes with a view of reaching a conclusion and a recommendation that we hope to report to this council around about October with an approach to those services. The Rotorua wastewater scheme has received its resource consent. Yesterday, the appeal period expired, for those with objections, and we are now in the process of concluding our designs, securing the supply contracts, and we will come to you from time to time, over the next few months with recommendations to approve certain value contracts to proceed with the waste treatment plant and the installation of a step system for Rotorua and the reticulation system. That will be a very tight time frame over the next 12 months because we have to comply with the Ministry of Health's time frames to finish work in Rotorua by June, July next year. So we will be all busy in that respect. The 5th item I want to bring to your attention is we continue to do work with regards to our preparations for the city Rotorua waste treatment plant, and to that effect we're preparing our technical conditions and specifications, but also preparing our cultural assessment and cultural aspects of these works. And to that effect, I've got the pleasure to have Jenny here with me, and I would like to walk you through a initial video, and then we can take questions onto that with regards to our efforts to address the cultural aspects of our wastewater treatment plant in the city. So, Jenny?
I think Hilda will be playing our video, but before we do that, I thought what I'd do is just give a little bit of context to it, because since we've created the video and put it up on Let's Talk Kōrero Mai on our website, and as we've shown it, as we've gone out and about on our engagement and so on, the interest in it has been really high, and we've taken lots of requests, and we've also seen it, the day we loaded it up onto Let's Talk Kōrero Mai, there were like 79 shares that day of the video. And while that's good and that's wonderful, what's important to remember when you watch this video is that the video is a tool. It's a tool that we created to help people see the outcome of something. it's a future outcome. And in this case, being the land contact bed or cultural treatment of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And while the outcome is really valuable, and this video, I hope everyone will find it is as beautiful as many people are finding it, what is more important is the context and the process that got us to coming up with the outcome. And that process has involved partnership with iwi and hapu, to find the initial solution to get the spraying out of Whakarewarewa forest by December 2019. And then over recent months, pushing beyond that to create this complementary treatment to our wastewater treatment plant that is based on Māori principles and also a solution that values mātauranga Māori or Māori knowledge and understanding as much as we value non-Māori knowledge and understanding as well. So in essence, and I've written this down so I don't get this wrong, the video is a culmination of 2.5 years of us enabling the Rotorua Project Steering Group with over 15 iwi and hapu representatives and a dedicated cultural assessment subcommittee who all brought with them their expertise, cultural and otherwise, to come up with a solution, and more recently creating a Mātauranga Māori experts reference panel made up of 22 Te Arawa people, many of whom are renowned rangatira of Te Arawa who offered their advice to this project. Yeah, so thank you. So, Hills?
His tears reflect his sorrow, parted from his one true love. She can no longer hold him, pining for his touch. Only his tears connect them. His love, his loss, will continue to sustain her and us. Tātou, tātou. We are all connected to the dawn of time. Wai, water, finds its genesis here as an outpouring of the love between our primordial parents. Ranginui, Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, Mother Earth. It was their son Tāne Mahuta who ultimately separated them, breaking their internal embrace and casting our world from Te Pō, the darkness, into Te Ao Marama, the world of light. Ti hei mauri ora. Nau mai, haere mai, ki te ākau o te ārikiroa, Sulphur Bay here in beautiful Rotorua. Before you is the proposed new land contact bed driven and developed by the people of Te Arawa. It is a world first. It is culturally innovative, it is new, but its origins are ancient. The process is underpinned by Mātauranga Māori, Māori knowledge, unique to Te Arawa, its people and its lands. The focus seeks to restore, cleanse and regenerate. Spiritual cleansing, restoration of Māori through mimicking the processes of our mother Papatuanuku. Imagine Ranginui's tears rain down on Papatuanuku. Droplets absorbed into her skin. His tears are like magnets. They're drawn to other water bodies and journey through the earth and rock.
Mai e, te tupupa mai e, te tawhito mai e, te kāhui o ngāriki mai e, tā viviki ngā tua. Ui, ka taki nā te mahuri ko te mauri a hua noa ki runga ki e nei wai, nui ki runga ki e nei wai rere. Ka tau te mauri ki runga ki e nei wai he tukunga o te whai ororo wa tāne te wai ora. Tēnei te matatau ka e ke whakatū tāre wiki te rangi haumi e, i hui e, i tā iki e. Ka taki nā te kawa ko te kawa nui ko te kawa roa ko te kawa whakatike i ahua mai no tiki o te rangi. I tupu iho ko te pū, ko te weu, ko te rita, ko te taki, ko te pūkenga, ko te wānanga, ko te tāuru, ko te tauira. Tēnei rā te āwhinu ko te āwhirangi no te ororo i o matua. I puea i te take i uwe nuku i uwe warangi. Tēnei ka hohau ki runga ki te tupua ki runga ki te tawhito ki runga ki te kāhui o ngāriki. Ki aputa e nei wai ki te whai au ki te ao mārama. Uhi, wero, tau mai te Māori, haumi e. Hui e, i tā iki e.
The water travels beneath the earth before welling up through to the surface, te ao kitea, returning to the world of light. It then passes through rock and vegetation bands. These gabion baskets hold rocks, stones, pumice, rhyolite and obsidian, all unique to these lands and unique to Te Arawa. Each rock and stone is a time capsule encasing the history of our district, including the Tarawera eruption and the formation of the Rotorua caldera. Locally sourced rocks and boulders carefully selected by hapu and iwi strengthens the intent to restore Māori as the water passes over and through them. The integration of symbols and whakairo on these kohatu helps to make the water mā. Interwoven between the gabion baskets are bands of vegetation, harakeke, flax, raupo, reeds, to emulate the natural wetlands found along the lake's margins. As happens in nature, having passed through the rock and wetland, filtered water is invigorated, energised and aerated as it begins to rapidly move, spray and crash. The wai then become streams, here created through rills of different widths and sizes, which also create different sounds of water flow before it slows and comes to rest in the calming still waters of the pond. Aquatic freshwater species native to Rotorua inhabit these waters. Life in these waters will show us that the treated wai is again noa. Te ao Māori is not only beautiful, it is powerful and in its own way can help us to help ourselves. By looking after our whaia, papatuanuku, we are looking after our mokopuna. This special place holds a lot of mana, the Māori of hapu and iwi, karakia, whakatūwhera. It also embodies markings of kaitiakitanga with symbols of protection, such as the popo. These waters have been cleansed and passed by these popo, which bless their journey through the Wairere to Lake Rotorua. The Māori of the Wai is now restored and flows outwards, seeking to enhance our beautiful lake. Te Rotorua nui a kawhimata momoi. Tihei Māori ora.
Thank you, elected members and Madam Chair. What I would like to share with you in this context, and personally, obviously, I'm no expert and I'm not knowledgeable about the deep cultural meaning of this, of this video. However, last week on the 30th of August, we had the first industry briefing for the wastewater sector, who are going to work with us to explore opportunities and options for us to manage our wastewater systems, over the next few years. For that purpose, we have invited a wide range of people in the industry to come and participate and listen to our briefing for our technical, operational, cultural expectations on this project. We had about 70 high-level industry representatives representing 37 companies. We gave them a technical representation, the number of pipes we've got, the length of pipes, the types of pipes, the value of our assets, the condition of our pipes, the pump stations, the grinding pumps, and so on. However, we did try to emphasize to them by presenting them this video that Rotorua is unique. we have a unique blend of culture and requirements, and our expectation as a council representing the community is that their approach will be not monolithic towards technical aspects, but also to recognize and abide by the cultural expectations of our communities. So we've combined, as part of our presentation, this video and a very knowledgeable and inspirational talk from Tataru White, who in his very knowledgeable way explained the connection in between that video and the treatment of wastewater. And again, in my simple words, said, well, what you heard earlier from engineers is a technical aspect and the science behind it. What you see in this video and my discussion is a cultural and spiritual treatment of wastewater. Subsequent to the briefing, we had what we call speed dating. We've met with about 12 interested consortiums on half-an-hour sessions to explore in more details, the aspects of our expressions of interest request. All of them, without exception, they expressed this following sentiment. They said that this was the first time in that experience in the country where the connection between the science and the EU spirituality and culture was adequately explained. They left that briefing feeling richer in terms of their knowledge and understanding of that, of that connection and the uniqueness we've got in Rotorua. So, as I said, I'm no expert into that, but certainly the industry's response to that video and the talk from Tataru White, it was overwhelmingly favorable and very grateful. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Okawate.
When this all blew up, and because the people out there no, I won't go in there, but anyway, it's great to see this because people can clearly see that the things that are important to their worldview has been taken into account for something that is critical for the community anyway, so thank you for that. Look, I just wanted to ask two questions. One of them is relating to the request for proposal, and I see where that could also include the provision of enforcement as well as the prosecution side as well, logistics. And does that include our city guardians? Are we referring to the city guardians there, who actually play quite a significant public relations role? So I was just a bit concerned about that. That's one question. Well, actually, the second one is in relation to Kaingaroa. And I know that that's a crap water supply. It really is, and I've been there and had a look at it. And I just wanted to ask is, while we're going to monitor it and offer technical advice, is there any long-term plan for the water supply for Kaingaroa to get it out of the situation it's in right now and has been in for quite a number of years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rebecca. Now, with regards to the expression of interest and the request for proposal for parking services, the guardian function is outside, the scope. What we do and we have been doing for the last couple of years, we intermix the guardian function and enforcement as a matter of efficiency. But the parking enforcement would not include guardian duties. Guardian duties will stay with the council, and obviously, I also wanted to highlight that during the LTP, we will workshop and discuss with you your desire to maintain, enhance, or modify the function of the guardians, going forward, in the long-term plan. Kaingaroa, yes, obviously you appreciate this. They are not under our governance jurisdiction. They got their own unique community there. I had a call from, I can't remember the name of the person, a councillor there, who rang me and he said, look, our pump is damaged, you have no power supply, and can you help us with emergency water as a matter of civil defense? And we made arrangements to provide for them. But also we spoke to them, and we are talking to them about enhancing the water supply, both in terms of the business as usual, but also as a matter of emergency procedure. And we have not reached a conclusion to that, but we have offered to work with them to help in that respect.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just Going back to page 39 there, Stavros, with regard to the speed limits assessments, I would have thought that the down at Waitapu on the main road there, we would have given consideration to reducing the speed limit in front of the tavern down to Benny B somewhere, and that's I've often had a fright on that corner where the tourists coming out of Waitapu Road forget which side of the road they're supposed to be on.
Thank you, Councillor. But Waitapu Road, obviously, that's a state highway, and NZTA are fully aware of our expectations and I suppose our desire to reduce the speed limit to around the 70 km area, so they are working in that respect. One of the reasons we have some delays in that aspect is that the speed setting rule has not been yet agreed by the government and is not due to be agreed until the 27th of September. Now, those areas we highlight here are areas where the community brought to our attention and they asked for speed reviews, and we are working through that. And again, when we come to you with a final report and recommendation, if you wish us to explore other areas based on your knowledge, quite open to continue to do that, since we're going to have the rule in place by the end of September.
Thank you, Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Starvis, for your report. I'm going back to page 39 too. Projects to be tendered, you've got Victoria Street and Rotorua Road. What's involved, what's the delay, and are there any problems you're going to see in those two particular roads? Because is Victoria Street, is that going to have to be closed permanently, for a long period of time, or is it going to find alternative transport to get into the mall?
Thank you, Councillor. Good. Well, obviously, every time we work into inner city, main road, which provides access to some main activities, always a challenge. If you'd recall, we worked on Lake Road in front of the hospital, last year into the rehabilitation. But rehabilitation basically means that you have to excavate and replace the foundation of the road because over the years they get contaminated with groundwater and silt and clay, and obviously loses its bearing capacity. No, I would fully expect that the management of that project would be in such a way that access will be maintained at all times, although it might be reduced capacity in certain point of time. So there's no reason at all why the work cannot be done in segments, to enable access, to the car parking area of the central mall.
Completed, would you be better putting a speed weight restriction on that particular road?
No, I don't think I think every road we build has to comply with a certain bearing capacity. It's a code of practice that has to be maintained. If we think we cannot achieve that bearing capacity of the road, then obviously yes, we can arrange some load limitations. But I see no reason at all why Victoria Street should not be able to cope with a legal weight bearing capacity that's allowed by the New Zealand Transport Agency on vehicles that have been legally licensed for that.
Thank you, Mr. Bisini Tule, followed by Mr. Martin.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora kōrua. Kia ora, Jenny. Te tuhine. Just that video was quite impressive, and I think I appreciated the innovative and cultural integration, and also that, for me, that seems to be a world first with tertiary systems. It usually is just machine next to machine next to machine into the waterways. So to see some kind of integration between Māori cultural knowledge and science, it is impressive. However, there are objections still. So my question is, how do members of the community, whānau and hapu, place those objections? Because you're saying there are 22 notable rangatira. It's really hard for a rangatahi to put their objections in front of a rangatira. So I'm still hoping that if there are objections, that we keep bringing them out and keep having these discussions. And a similar one is, will there be riparian planting further downstream so that the community of Ngāpuna can possibly hear the return of their frogs? It's a small thing, but the Te Aroha Lake strategy, one of their kaupapa is so that the water is so clear you can see the footsteps of the coda on the bottom. And listening to some of the whānau in Ngāpuna, their equivalent is that they can hear the frogs at night. The frogs have been gone for a generation. And we know that frogs are vital for ecosystems. So is there any way that that type of whakaaro can come forward with the system?
So many of the Mātauranga Māori experts actually talked about that. So, and the video couldn't actually reflect all of the whakaaro that came forward in the wānanga, but the whakaaro around more planting following the channel through to Pueringa Bay, so did come up and is likely to be introduced. We've also been doing hui with hapu and iwi around the lake. We've done about 9. We've got one this Sunday at 10:30 a.m. at Te Papai o Uru Marae, no mai hara mai. And as we've been going out, the point is that we're trying to make this better as we go all the time. And other than making sure we introduce the katakitaki or native fish species in the calming pond, kōrero about frogs has also come out. So the intent will be to meet as many of those cultural needs as we possibly can.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Donaldson, and then we'll have our last question by Councillor Kent.
Yeah, not a question, just supporting Jenny's kōrero in response to Potawa's question. So there have been, as Jenny said, a number of engagement hui, one at Hurunga Marae. Selwyn Inslee has been appointed to the Mātauranga Māori panel on behalf of that marae to have input into the design. And look, the response has been quite overwhelming because we all know that this was the aspect of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade that was not unanimous at project steering committee level. There were, as you point out, objections, but one of those who didn't support this was Te Arawa Lakes Trust. So Sir Toby came to Hurunga Marae, and then a subsequent hui was with Te Arawa Lakes Trust, who unanimously voted to support the concept and get on and build it, was their message. But as Jenny's saying, through all of these engagement hui, she is collecting useful feedback, which is fine-tuning the design and the knowledge. And there are actually at some of these hui important kaumata who are throwing themselves onto the Mātauranga Māori panel who want to be engaged. So it's a stunning engagement process, and similar to the earlier video with Councillor Tapsell, this one's received applause at the Pukenga o Te Arawa hui at Kia Roa Marae. The whole marae burst into applause. So for me, the profound thing has been the body language and the response from those present.
Supplementary to that, the rangatira, this has been a long process. The rangatahi, this has been a new process, and they're at the beginning and not happy. And so I think there needs to be some engagement between council and rangatahi, equally as there is between council and rangatira, because these are the waterways of the future. And if we're just going to consider the people of now and overlook the future, then we're setting ourselves up for another fight. There are pockets of rangatahi within all of those 3 hapu who want some questions answered, I think, as equally as we've been doing to our rangatira.
Okay, thank you. Now we really must carry on as we have some guests waiting to present. Apologies, lunch was for 12:30, but we'll have to carry through until just after 1 o'clock. So Councillor Kent and Mr. Martin, sorry for missing your name earlier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. On the wastewater treatment plant direction that we're heading, we've got the Ministry of the Environment's announced central government funding for the proposed Tarawera scheme to the tune of $6.5 million towards an $18 million cost. What sort of timeframes involved in that? And what is the impact going to be on our wastewater treatment plant by the time we've done, and on our budgets, by the time we take into account Rotorua to Rotorua, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade to get out of the forest by 2019, and Tarawera on top? And I'm seeing alarm bells ringing.
Sorry, Councillor Kent, that is an LTP discussion that will be brought up later, but points absolutely taken. Mr. Martin.
Madam Chairman, mine's not so much on wastewater, it's on speed limits. Is that okay? You want to stick with it? the wastewater assessment and what you've presented in the video there, congratulations. I'd just like to remind you that's how the Awaho, the Nongataha, the Utahina used to look going back about 20 years ago before the environment people got involved with it and put fences around it and filled it up with blackberry gorse and all those other things. It was pristine for the watercress and the kora over that particular time, and we've lost the whole lot. So, Madam Chairman, my actual request, please, is the speed limit assessments. I asked that Paradise Valley Road be included in the assessment. We've been 20 years asking. The last one was done by a Mrs. Wiles, who took a petition round, got 100% people wanting to have a reduction to 80 k's. Madam Chairman, the issue is, at the moment, it is a walking and a cycling road. It's classed as a mini marathon. It's 22 k's, and we've got a tremendous amount of people actually cycling and walking on that road. There is a sign on the road that says very clearly, give the access to the cyclist by 1.5 metres. So you've got to step 1.5 metres or drive 1.5 metres away from the cyclist. And a normal car width that actually puts you over the white line. So it's a dangerous situation, and that's one of the reasons why I'm asking to have it reduced, please. The condition of the road is appalling. It's deteriorated something terrible, and it's not because of the actual flood, but what has taken place in many other years. There's stock movements, there's horse riding, and there's two one-way bridges. But what concerns me the most, Madam Chairman, is the fact is that when the Ferry Springs Road gets closed through an accident or whatever, that's the only access from the north into Rotorua. And at the moment, it's chaos. It's absolute chaos when Ferry Springs Road gets closed off. So I ask, please, is there a possibility that Valley Road, Paradise Valley Road, be put on the 80k or less limit? Do you need a motion, or is it going to be taken that it would be looked at, please?
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I've saw Stavros noting that down, and I'm sure that he will get back to you on how and when that could happen. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, as mentioned, we do have some guests waiting, so we had one more section, an operations group from Henry Weston. I'll just take that read. If there are any urgent questions, you can raise them now. Otherwise, speak to him directly after. No? Okay, wonderful. Well, we'll make the resolution to go into public excluded. We have one confidential report to be discussed, and then a presentation following which we will bring forward. So the confidential items for operational report for July to August 2017, and also the presentation. So the reason for going into public excluded session is to enable any local authority holding the information to carry on without prejudice or disadvantage and negotiations, including commercial and industrial negotiations. We do also need to pass in this resolution that the following people may remain in public excluded session regarding the item PCTN update, as they are key stakeholders who assist the meeting in relation to this matter. So those people listed are John Hura, Alamoti Te Pou, Bridget Robinson from CNI, and Colin Mulder, excuse me if that's said incorrectly, from Timberlands, and Olive Jonas from Te Tumu Pairo. Can I please have a mover and seconder for that? Yes, move Councillor Gould, second Councillor Maxwell, apologies. All those in favour? Passed. Against? Sorry, that motion is passed. So we'll just give a few minutes for the public to